Hey everybody, this is Luca, the co-host of the Movie Pope podcast, and today we are going to be taking a look at interviews with individuals involved in the North Carolina film scene. Now, usually when people think of North Carolina, they think of the beaches or the mountains or banking or the Carolina Panthers or Chapel Hill, but a lot of people will tend to forget that North Carolina does have an active film scene, especially here in Charlotte, North Carolina, where there just seems to be a lot going on, but people just don't know too much about it. So what we are doing in this particular episode is basically combining all of the interviews that we've done with individuals who work in the film industry here in Charlotte and kind of bring to light what's going on here, and hopefully this will make you learn to appreciate what exactly is going on here and just how vibrant the talent is. The first interview will be with Juli Emmons of the Carolina Film Community, which is a collective where filmmakers and enthusiasts come together to collaborate and network. And then we'll chat with Keith Sweeney, who works with the crafts department on film sets and offers his insight as to what exactly goes on and how people can actually get a leg up in the industry. And then finally, we'll round off with the production assistant who had it all but decided to give it all up to become a beekeeper, which was a very, very exciting episode for me to do. But other than that, sit back, relax, and enjoy, and get to learn more about the Charlotte film scene here in North Carolina. And welcome back to the Movie Pope podcast. And today we have a great guest. We've got Juli Emmons from the Carolina Film Community here, and we're going to be chatting about herself, the organization, and what they do, as well as the film scene in North Carolina. But before we dive in, remember to like, comment, subscribe, and as always, please share this video with your friends, acquaintances, even adversaries and foes. We are looking to grow our audience, and we are always looking to expand our reach. So let's go ahead and dive in. Juli, how are you doing today?
I'm well, thank you. How are you guys doing?
Can't complain. It's just another Saturday. Do you think it's kind of weird that the day after Halloween it felt like the middle of January?
Oh my gosh, it was freezing. Yes, that was crazy.
I look out my window on Wednesday, and my whole car is encased in ice. And in years past, I would have to spend 20 minutes scraping the ice off and sitting in there, freezing my tail off, while the heater blasted it off. And now that I work from home, I'm like, it's whatever.
Yeah, it's whatever, exactly.
But now, I don't know. The weather here is just schizophrenic because it can't make up its mind on whether it wants to be hot or cold. Now it feels like summertime.
Yeah, today was beautiful, but then yesterday when I was running, yesterday morning, it was 28.
Oh, yes.
It's jumping all over the place.
Yeah, but I did hear a prediction that there's going to be snow this year, which will be a nice relief.
Well, last year, and I might be wrong, but I don't believe we had even one actual snowfall.
No, we did not one bit. We had ice, though, a lot of ice, but no snow.
But I'm a summer girl, so I don't cry too much about that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, summer's a lot longer here in the Carolinas than any other season. So, Juli, let's go ahead and dive in. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do and how you got into the field that you're in?
Okay. So like you said, I'm Juli Emmons. I'm with the nonprofit Carolina Film Community, and I think that is probably what I'm doing the most of right now. But what I do for a real job in the industry is I work in casting. So I will I'll cast for movies, commercials, television, sometimes here and there. A lot of times on the bigger budget films, I'll do the extras casting, and then on smaller, independent or just small productions, commercials and stuff, I'll do all the casting that's involved with that. And I got involved. Actually, I started wanting to be an actress. And, like a lot of us do. And I acted a lot, in theater and things like that. But then when I got into film, I really loved it. But I don't even know how to explain it, but there's just sort of a distaste for it started coming on. And I'm not shy at all. And I deal with rejection totally fine. But I started getting anxious every time I'd have to audition and that kind of thing. And before my career ever even took off, I was like, this is not for me. And a good friend of mine is a casting director. I met her on a film, and I was just asked her, during a slow time. I said, "Hey, do you want some help doing this extras casting thing. And she's like, absolutely, please help me. And I ended up working on that film with her, and I actually really loved it. I loved the process. I'm very organized, very type A personality. And so it really worked for me to do that. So that's what I do. That's what I get paid for. I also do some producing for like small films, independent films, things that I've created and made myself. I've produced. I used to have it, I have a team of filmmakers, and we all work together to make films. So I got my hand in a lot of different things, but mostly I do casting.
Gotcha. So, are you a member of SAG or what?
No, I'm not a member of SAG. We're a right to work state. So with our actors and stuff, they don't, and I'm not, I don't do acting. So SAG is an acting union. So I would never have joined that because that wouldn't have been very lucrative for me. But no, I'm not a part of a union at all, just because we are right to work and I'm independent. So it's just me.
Gotcha. And the reason why I ask is because obviously you're aware of the whole strike going on. It's what, 6 months now?
Yeah, it's going on way too long, actually. And if I'm being perfectly honest, like I've been so like frustrated with the whole thing. I've almost kind of checked out for the last couple of months of just like throwing the hope up that it's going to get figured out. I know that sounds terrible, but it's just been such a frustrating experience. It feels like every couple of years we have another frustrating experience like that. So I'm like sort of hoping that SAG figures it out, that, everybody gets it all figured out soon, because so many of my friends are actors and they are depending on this.
Okay. Now, has it affected you in any way?
No, not really. Like I said, I work independently, so my jobs come to me. I'm not with a company or anything, and I'm not acting, so that's not going to affect me. The fact that there aren't as many movies coming, obviously with like the writer's strike and that kind of thing, no, not terribly. Just because of the fact that I do commercials, things like that. Things that aren't really scripted. I know it has had a huge impact on the people that do work in my field in casting, because if there's no movies, there's nothing to cast. If there's no television shows, but I've been fortunate enough to kind of be doing smaller stuff that's not really falling on that scripted stuff right now.
Gotcha. So you're actually the first guest who actually works in casting. So I do have a few questions that I want to ask you, if that's okay.
Oh, sure.
So my understanding of casting is typically whenever there's a project in the pipeline, my understanding is that the producers will let the casting people know what they're looking for, and then sometimes the producers will be present, but it's mostly the casting agent who kind of acts as the eyes and ears of the production team, so to speak, to find the right person. Is that an accurate statement, or am I far left field?
No, that's about right. We work with not just the producers, but the director, and kind of try to all work hand in hand with the vision that is there for the film. Depending on whose vision it is, it could be strictly the directors, and he's getting a lot of creative leeway, or the producers, but just sort of working hand in hand to see what they see and try to find the right people to make that happen.
Gotcha. So can you walk me through the process of what it's like when you're looking for the right person to cast?
So what we do is we put out what's called a casting notice, and we send that to our talent agents.
Mm-hmm.
And then they go through their talent, and it might be, I need a Caucasian male, 60 to 70, silver hair, who knows how to ride a tricycle. I don't know. You make it up, and they go and they find all the people that they have in their agency that fit that, and they send those people. And we'll look through them. And if they, if it's someone that we're like, no, that doesn't really match what we're looking for, or it's close, but not quite. And sometimes there'll be no one, and you'll have to put something out with more, with a broader idea of what you're looking for. But when we get, a handful of those people, we send them on to the director, whoever it is that's asking, the producers, and let them take a look. And if they like those people, then we bring them in for an audition. Mm-hmm. And we have them come and read the sides that are provided, which is just a piece of the script that character would read. And from there, working again hand in hand with the director, producers, we decide which one is best for the role, and then they get cast into that role. For extras casting, it's a little bit different. It kind of just depends on the film, but say you have a film that's taking place at a high school. Well, obviously, the stars, they're the ones that are being cast with auditions. Extras they're in the background, and sometimes they're called just background actors, but they're the people that you see in the film that you don't even realize that you're seeing, but the film would be incomplete without them. And then they just give us a broad idea of like, I need males and females 14 to 18 to be these high school students. And so you're just basically looking for anybody that looks like they'd be a high school student that can be a part of this background scene to I guess, fill the movie with authenticity.
Right. Sort of like create the ambiance of a scene, right?
Right. Yeah. And I don't know, like, I don't have a good example for you, but I know there's been times that I've watched films and been like, why is the cafeteria empty? Or why does it look off? And maybe that's just because I know like what I'm supposed to be looking for, but it's like your brain doesn't quite accept that there's just no one in this crowded arena. Like,
right. So so when you're casting for leads and you're going through the talent, is there like a magic number that you're looking for? Like you're looking for like 10 or 20 people to possibly give to the directors, and then they let you know, hey, I need, if you can find 5 candidates, to bring in and read for the part, that'd be great. Is there anything like that?
It's usually up to their discretion. If they're like, I need to see 15 of these people because I don't think I'm going to have the right one, then you bring in a lot, especially if it's very like specified. But if it's just an older man who's going to be standing, it just comes down to what the director's looking for. He may know in the first 3 people that you send him, no, that's the guy, but he may send us back 5-10 times and say, you haven't found him yet, keep going. So it kind of just comes down to what they're thinking.
Gotcha. And you said you used to do acting. Does that has that given you like a unique perspective when it comes to casting? Because I'm sure it does.
It definitely does, and it gives me a lot of sympathy, I guess, maybe empathy for them, because it is very, even with someone that's outgoing like I am, and it's not really necessarily afraid of rejection or whatever. It's hard. It's hard to put yourself to be vulnerable like that, and so I like to believe that it's given me a softer spot for those actors, just knowing what they're doing and how hard it is to walk in there every time and do it over and over, and just try to be exactly what someone's looking for. I mean, that's hard in life. But it's also very hard as a job, like to be exactly what someone is looking for. So it certainly gives me that perspective, just on how hard they work and how much it matters, to treat them with respect and understanding.
Yeah, because I can because I've done some casting myself when I was a lot younger, and and when I didn't get the role, I'm like, man, these people just don't get it. They just don't understand how much I really, really want this. I mean, have you ever felt? I felt like, I know what these people are going through, but I have to, be like this because I've got a job to do.
Yeah. And that's even hard, for the casting director. It's difficult because that you're hurting somebody, that you're kind of squashing their dream. And a lot of times they'll come in like that and they're like, I know I'm perfect for this role. And I mean, yeah, maybe, but the director didn't agree, or whoever didn't agree. And it is kind of hard to be on that side of it and sort of dash that person's hopes. And so again, like I try to be very understanding. I try to be very kind, especially if you're saying no, you didn't get the role, and just hope that they know going into it, like this is what it is. I might not get it, kind of thing.
Right. So so is there like a particular group or particular group of individuals or type of individuals that you would say are the most difficult to cast?
Ooh, that's a good question.
I know that's a pretty loaded question, but
honestly, a lot of times it is men in their like middle age. And the reason I think for this, no one's ever said this, is a lot of times those people have, and this is awful, I'm just going to sound like I'm a woman hater, but a lot of times those people are the breadwinners more often than not. Mm-hmm. And if they're not full-time actors, then this is their secondary job. And so while they really love acting, they might not have the capability of taking that time off to go be like, say, on a series or, for a week of shooting. They might not have that capability. So a lot of times we run into, I'd love to do that, but I don't have the luxury of taking off this week from my actual job, because they don't act enough to make it a full-time job, unfortunately. And there are some that do, but that's what I think I run into the most.
Yeah, in films, in film shoots, they have like some of the toughest schedules out there, so I can totally sympathize with that. Have you ever like, been on a film set as a casting director, or do they just tell you to just stick in your office and send us the talent.
You know, when I was younger, I loved being on the set. That was my, like, one of the top things. I love to watch the actors do what they do. But as I've gotten older, I've just kind of liked to just be in my office. I do go to the set, and I like to, well, you know, you want to meet the people that you're working with. You don't want it to be strictly over a computer, and just have the experience. But I think that it's really an exciting industry, and it's, you know, a lot of people don't do it, and so they don't know what's going on. And so I don't ever want to take for granted that. But after so many years of doing it, it's sort of like, yeah, this is cool. But I would, and the hours, I mean, sometimes they're working, you know, 15 hours a day, sometimes well into the night. So yeah, I mean, I still go, everything that I'm on, I try to make some kind of appearance there if possible, you know, especially if it's more than a day or so. But for the most part, I would rather be in my office.
Right, because it's less strenuous and you're not having people yelling at you, right?
Yeah, it's just so busy, and it's just there's so much chaos. And a lot of times I end up being in the way more than I'm being helpful, or I'll have to walk away and use my computer to cast for something the next day or schedule something the next day. So it ends up being not as helpful with me being there anyway, unless there's a purpose, you know, for some reason that I'm there. But a lot of times it's so much easier just to be available by phone or computer and just do my work from where I'm comfortable.
Gotcha. So did you start your job as a casting agent, like before or after the pandemic?
Oh no, I've been doing this almost 20 years.
20 years? Gotcha. And this might sound like a dumb question. What's the difference between, you know, casting, you know, prior to 2020 and what it is after?
Oh gosh. So this is where I would not want to be an actor. What had happened before is, you know, you could see your actors in person, and there is definitely, in my opinion, I'm just speaking from my own experience. There's a different, like chemistry, I guess I'm gonna use that word, that you can have with an actor that is standing in front of you. And once the pandemic happened, everything was virtual. Everyone was sending in auditions. They were videoing them, and you could be the absolute best at videoing, but it wouldn't matter because you can't feel that chemistry. And I think that is just really stinks for the actors. It really does, because sometimes you can just really hit it off with a casting director, and even if you don't get that role, they feel it for you, and you just don't get that through video. And that has been the hardest part, in my opinion.
So has it, you know, worked you know, to a disadvantage for most of these actors then, do you think?
I think it's been a huge disadvantage, particularly for the newer actors.
Gotcha.
You know, if you're established and you know your casting directors, and you know, it's a small industry out here, so a lot of us all know each other. You have an advantage there. But if you're a newer actor and you're trying to get on the scene, 2020 it would have kicked their butt.
Yeah. Is that still an ongoing process, or have you like started moving back to the in-person casting?
Yeah, for the most part, people, it's kind of comes down to the preference of the casting director too. Like, do they want to deal with people coming in and that kind of thing? Because to be honest, I think as a country, well, as a world, has gotten kind of lazy. And there's a nice part of it. You know, you don't have to go get an office. You don't have to bring people in. You know, that part's been like, well, I mean, we could all do this. But again, just for me personally, I have tried getting back into the wanting to see the people. And I believe there are several others that like that process of seeing and feeling that chemistry.
Yeah, because then you can kind of get the feeling of, you know, whether or not this person might be right, even if they're saying they are, you know, right for the role, you know.
Right. And you can do a great audition. I'm not, you know, I think that a lot of people do wonderful video auditions. I just think it's really nice to like feel that interaction as well.
Yeah, exactly. So I wanted to shift gears a little bit. So I originally heard about you from Bradley with the Independent Picture House, and he actually pointed me in your direction, and I started looking at the website, just reading up about you guys. But can you tell me and our audience a little bit about what, you know, how you got started and what you guys do with the Carolina film community?
Yeah, absolutely. So in 2009, that's when we started. And that was when our incentives for film had gone away. And at that point, there was just nothing. We weren't making, I mean, I'm trying to think if there's even 2 films a year that North Carolina was doing. That were big budget films. And it was really hurting our industry. Obviously, people were having to move away because we couldn't work here. And there was such a frustration. Yeah, there were independent films being made, but on a large scale, we weren't getting any work. And there was such frustration in that. And so the big thing was like, well, if people aren't going to, if they're not going to bring film here and help us here, we'll just create something and we'll start putting together a community that will make their own films and we'll get films out. And while they're still not big budget films, the whole idea was just like to keep creative juices flowing because we believed that something better was coming. And so that's what we did. We had our first meeting in 2009 and we had about 150 people came. And it was just, there was such a hunger for it that it just took off. Just the idea of wanting to be together and have this collective mindset of creating film. And yeah, and about that time, our incentives did actually start to change back over. And so we ended up getting films, which is amazing because now we have this huge community that we could share information with. So it's like, hey, this film's coming. If you're an actor, this is happening. If you're, whatever, if you work in crafty, this is happening. And so it was like this wealth of information that this community was sharing. And
so basically you guys were like a network, letting each other know, when where the next job is, right?
Yeah. So we had like a whole networking side of it. We were educating every month. We were having speakers come in that were educating the group on different things. They might have like a producer from the latest film might come in or anybody that can come and talk, casting directors. We've had them come in and talk to the actors about how to give a great audition. Things like that. So we were also educating. And then on top of that, we started our own in-house film contest that was called at the time it was Made in Charlotte, but as we grew, we started calling it Made in Carolinas. So it was also kind of forcing these people, hey, if you're not going to do it on your own, we're going to kind of force you into being creative and have this, friendly competition against each other. So your friends are doing this and now let's all do it together. And it just really took off. It really grew. So I can't say enough. I'm bragging a little, but I can't say enough good things about the way the community kind of came together, even so much as like taking care of one another too. That there was a death in a family, people rallied together and they took care of that person. If a baby was born, people rallied together. It ended up being an alternative really to church in the South. In the South, that's what your church does. But if you're not a churchgoer, and many people aren't, myself included, this is a place for you to find community that was going to not just be a place you could find a job, but a place you could find a place.
So it ended up becoming, a huge family, as it were.
It did. And I think that we still even have that. And that's probably the thing I'm most proud of is if something bad happens, a lot of people want to hear the bad news, but when bad happens, it's not that we're just sharing this bad news. Like we're jumping in, we're taking care of each other, and example after example. But even just the good stuff, watching some of these kids that started back in the 2009, 2010, who are in college and stuff now, or graduating college now, and it's like, oh my goodness, like just watching these wonderful things happen. It was and it is kind of like a family.
Yeah, because because I hear so many stories about how people who take part in productions, they grow close together and soon they're like a huge family. So that's pretty heartwarming to hear. So in regards to the community, so like you said, that it's a huge network where you guys are passing information along to each other about the next production and what they're looking for and who they're looking for. Are the people in the film community, are they mostly film professionals, people who've worked in the industry?
So I think we have a really big mixed bag. I would say at the very beginning, it was mostly actors, and some of those were mostly background actors looking to help, hopefully get bigger stuff. Right. Progressively through the years, we've had such a mix of it that we've had industry professionals, at the top, people that are not only working in the field doing stuff, but also making their own films, all the way back down to, budding actors as kids. So I would say now it goes across the board. And I like to say this is the place that there's a spot for everybody. And I don't know if I'm, just being honest, like the people that are the industry professionals, they come, but I think they are the ones that are coming to be the knowledge, to be the help, to, because they're not going to probably get as much out of the group other than the speaker. You might want to make a connection there. But I'm so grateful because a lot of those that come, they're there to help build the community, and they're giving of themselves. They're giving information, they're helping people find their place, and a lot of new people are coming in, and that's been so helpful to them, to have that connection to people that are professionals.
So can you kind of describe to me the type of people who are in the community? Because I know you mentioned actors, but are we talking like makeup artists or filmmakers or cinematographers or lighting people?
All of that, yeah. Again, there are the actors, and I would say probably half the people are actors, which makes sense. You need about half actors on a film,
right?
And then we have directors, we have still photography, cinematography, a few makeup artists that are regular attendees. Other producers that come, a lot of screenwriters. At one point before the pandemic, we had an independent screenwriting group that was like a sister group of this, that worked through us. So, just I can't think of any part of it that there isn't some representation in the community.
Gotcha. So if someone were to say, "Hey, I need a gaffer," most likely, you can point me to a gaffer or two, right?
I can point you to a gaffer, or I could point you to someone that can point you to a gaffer. And that's, that would be the industry professionals. They would either be that, or they'd be the one that says, "Oh, I work with Joe over here, and that's what he does. Let me put you in contact with him." So a lot of times, even if that person's not standing there in the room that night, somebody has that contact to help you.
So do you guys meet on a regular, on a weekly basis, or monthly, or
so
how do you all stay connected?
We met monthly up until this last year. And this last year, we tried something a little different with doing quarterly. I don't know if I'm totally sold out to it. I've been talking to my board about what we're going to do for 2024. It had perks and it had downsides, but up until last year, we met every month regularly.
Gotcha. And you guys just meet up and just chat about, about what's going on in the industry and everything, right?
Well, we all meet up, but, we have the speaker, whoever the speaker is for that night, and they give their presentation. They take questions, they answer questions. We also give a chance for local filmmakers to show some of their work. So if somebody's just made a short film that they want to put in a festival, they can show it. They can also take questions and answers, just trying to give people an opportunity to interact and also just learn about stuff while they're there. And then of course you're all there in the room, so you can meet people and network and things like that as well.
So if a filmmaker showed their film over there, they would do it before they submitted it to a film festival, right?
Sort of depending on the festival, if the festival lets you. There's all kinds of rules around that, but
okay, gotcha. So are y'all spread out across the Carolinas, or are you mostly concentrated one particular state?
We are concentrated in Charlotte. We've tried several times to try to branch out, and it hasn't ever quite taken off. Sort of halfway, and then Charlotte's been the only one that has just really steadily stayed. So we have people come in from Columbia and close, obviously Rock Hill and stuff, that are really close to the border, and then mostly Charlotte and all the surrounding areas of Charlotte as well.
So how come it's never worked with places like, say, Greensboro or Raleigh or Chapel Hill?
I don't know. I wish I had a better answer than that. It's just sometimes it hits and sometimes it doesn't, and it just didn't hit. We tried it in Wilmington, and we tried in the Triad area, and it just didn't have the same pizzazz. A lot of times, with Triad was so close that they're like, we'll just drive to Charlotte, because we're close enough in proximity that we kind of work on the same stuff. And then Wilmington, they have their own little film world there, and I just don't know that they were ready for us yet.
Yeah, they're doing their own thing in Wilmington. It's there's Wilmington, and there's the rest of North Carolina,
right?
Yeah. So I used to do an internship with the Charlotte Film Commission back in the early 2010s. Do you guys work with them, or do you have any contact with these guys?
And you were with the Charlotte Film Commission?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Beth is a friend of mine, and she'll come and speak for us, and she is very helpful. If people need locations, she's always, very open door policy with her. So yeah, they are great with just helping us with anything, actually. Any questions I've had, they've been very helpful with that, and just always open to being available to help any filmmakers and that kind of thing.
And what about the what about the schools in the area? Because I know UNCC's got it's got a separate college or school devoted to the arts. Do you
Yeah.
work with these guys also?
We don't work directly with them, no, but the people that do, like the teachers, professors, people like that, they are involved. Some of them, not all of them, are involved. And the same thing, just very helpful. We've had them come as speakers before. They attend some of the meetings. So we all try to keep, those doors open so that we can all, again, share information, help one another out, keep the community open, that kind of thing.
Gotcha. So this does lead me into my next question about the film scene in Charlotte, because you did mention, um, I think it was like '08 or '09, we lost the film incentives. Can you tell me, and I'm gonna sound dumb for saying this, but can you tell me what the film scene in Charlotte is like these days? Like, is it thriving? Or is it kind of, so?
Well, our incentives changed. When we had, the rebate, it was it was better. So it's changed some, but I would say we get a little bit of an up and down. And that's, again, like I'm saying it like how I feel like it works. And that's probably not completely fair because I don't have the numbers in front of me, of course. But I feel like we have a really busy season and we'll have like a lot of stuff happening. And then it may just kind of, wane for a little bit and then it'll come back. But I don't feel, I think that everybody, not including when we're on a strike, it feels like everybody stays pretty busy, pretty steadily working. And so I think that's really one of the best things we can ask for. I think everybody would love to be overly busy and turning down work. But if we could keep our industry employed, and I think that we are, again, without the strikes, typically we are doing that. And so we're having a film scene that is alive and vibrant. It, in my opinion, could be doing more, but it's not dead and it's not dying.
All right. So the film scene at the moment it's not dead, but it's not lively either. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I mean, I would like, I don't know if I'm saying it, but like I would say we're on the closer end of lively, but we're not as alive as we used to be.
Yeah. It's kind of like with the Charlotte music scene too, because
Yeah.
because I went to school at UNC Greensboro, and there were like bands playing everywhere. And you come here to Charlotte, it's like crickets. It's like, where the hell is everybody?
Yeah.
So like, because and I'm sure you can remember this too. I remember back in the '90s, there were like all these film productions going on in Charlotte. I mean, you remember Shallow Hal?
Oh yeah.
They shot that. I remember they shot that at the Siskey Estate in South Park, and then they did Shake, Rattle, and Roll, that TV movie. They filmed it in my old neighborhood,
Oh wow.
in Sedgefield. But but I kind of feel like nowadays, because I think that whole debacle under Governor McCrory kind of
Yeah.
took us down a hard path, and we've never really recovered from it. And
Well,
I
and then we
feel
had
like,
the pandemic.
yeah, true. Well, even before the pandemic, it felt like things were drying up, because I think the only major production that was shot in North Carolina in general was Iron Man 3, and
Yes.
that was pretty much it. Because ever since then, and I told people this, whenever we talk about film production in North Carolina, we've got to do something to steal Atlanta's thunder, because the stuff that they're doing down there, that could have been us. You know what I mean?
Oh,
That could have
absolutely.
been us.
Absolutely. There's a lot of bitterness on this end from that, for sure. Yeah, and you're right. Like when McCrory came, that did change our incentives. They let it sunset, and that was where everybody started getting really freaked out, because it was like, oh my gosh, we can't, like, we're making so much money right now with film. What do we do? And it did dry up, and it was scary. Like for a while, I mean, people were just very hungry, and they were going to Atlanta to work. I mean, Atlanta was like poaching us too. They were like offering to like pay your taxes for you to move or something. They were trying very hard to get more
That's
people, because they were
right.
getting so much work.
That's right, because I went to school. I actually majored in film production at UNC Greensboro, and a lot of my friends just up and left in 2010, 2011. They just either went out west or went to Atlanta, and that really broke my heart, because I'm like, everybody's been touting about Wilmington for years and years.
Oh, yeah.
What the hell happened here?
Yeah, and it definitely was. I mean, when that dried up, it became, I mean, it was bad. And then, when we got them back, that was great. We had a really great period of time. And now we work on a grant program, which is is good. I mean, it's just, we're just not getting as much work as we got, when we had the rebate. And Atlanta is still working on a rebate system, so they are definitely getting more work.
So I do want to ask you about the incentives. Can you tell us a little bit about what North Carolina's film incentives are, if you can speak to that?
I can try. I'm not gonna. I'm gonna try to just high level it because I won't try to get in the weeds. But essentially, what we have now is a grant program where they're applying to get, an amount of money that we have set aside. Okay. There's different rules and things that go into that. What kind you can submit for, what you can't submit for, things like that. But there's only a set amount of money that is there, and once that money is gone, that's it.
So are grants like typical or atypical when it comes to incentive programs?
I don't actually know that. I know that we were not previously on that in Atlanta, or not Atlanta, but in Georgia in general. They're also not, they rebate, which is, in my opinion, better. South Carolina might be on a grant program now. I'm not sure. That's a great question. I should find that out. I don't know how typical they are.
Okay, gotcha. No, I mean that's totally fine. Just because I remember someone telling me about that years and years ago, and man, I really need to read up more on this, because I figured whatever we've got going on with our incentive program right now, it's not enough. We're basically half-assing it.
I think that, and we fought really hard to keep the previous incentives. But it just comes down to, what the governor and his team and the state decide on. But I mean, it's much more complicated in my opinion now, the submitting for the grant, having to be approved and exactly what you need it for, versus the rebate where it's like, if you bring a movie here, you get 25% back.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier that way. And I certainly wish we would, jump back into that for sure.
So have y'all been active or been trying to, lobby, the governor to try to do something about the incentive programs to kind of, invite more work into the Carolina area?
So we are a nonprofit organization. We're a 501c3, so we can't really go and lobby per se, but we have up to what we can do. Like we had a letter writing campaign. We've gone to the Capitol, and they've had events there to try to do, what we can to speak to the governor, to speak to the House, things like that. So inside of what we can do, we have done that. And more than that, I think the most important thing that we provide is the fact that we're building stuff here, an infrastructure, so that should we, make a move where we're getting more film, there's an infrastructure here that can support it.
Gotcha. So what would be the best advice then to try to get the governor's office to, push the train a little bit, if you had any advice?
I don't know. To me, it just makes so much sense. It's like, and I use this example. I had to speak in front of a group one time, and I used the example of just, if Harris Teeter has milk for $3 and Publix has milk for $3, but Publix will give me back 25%, I'm going to Publix.
Right.
It just felt very easy and very simple. And I guess, they weren't seeing that the same way, obviously.
They overthought it. Yeah. Yeah. God bless the governor's office.
Yeah. That is not my job.
Yeah. But we're getting close to the end here. But Julie, before we go, if people are more interested in your work and what you do, or if they just want to reach out to you or connect with you, how can they do that?
If they want to find me personally, I mean, you can find me, all over the place. I'm on Facebook and Instagram and all that. But if they want to find Carolina Film Community, we have a Facebook page, an Instagram page, a Twitter page, and our website, which is carolinafilmcommunity.com.
Gotcha. And do they have to be actors or crew people to be members, or can anybody join?
No. Yeah, I think I encourage people, even if you're not involved in the industry, but you're just interested or supportive or whatever. I mean, I encourage people to come. Our next meeting is December the 5th, and our guest speaker is Darby Camp, who is she's a teenager now. It's hard to believe, but she's been a child actor for some time. She was the star of the film that came out, Clifford. She's been in, and I will not remember this now that I'm trying to remember it, but a Christmas movie with, why can't I? Goldie Hawn's husband, that I can't think of, Kurt Russell.
Yeah.
I'm like, duh. No, she's a wonderful actress. She has a wonderful family, and she's agreed to come and talk to us just what it's about, like what it's like to be a child actor and grow into being a teenager actor, and just what her life is like. So I'm excited for that. I think that especially child actors will get a lot out of that, and their parents, just knowing what it's like. But anybody, I mean, if you just want to be supportive, or if you're just interested in what it's like to be a child actor, or you just like Darby and her career, I encourage anybody to come and just experience that and kind of learn about that.
Excellent. And I'll have them down in the description below so people can check that out.
Awesome.
But before we end, Julie, this is a question that I ask all of my guests. Is there a particular movie or TV show that you've seen recently that you're just excited to talk about, that you're just person that seems to just proselytize?
Oh my gosh.
There are no wrong answers, by the way.
No, so much pressure. People ask me, they're like, oh, you love movies, so what's your favorite movie? And I'll be honest, I've never had a favorite movie, except maybe like when I was younger, I loved The Princess Bride. But I think it's a perfect movie. But you know what? My friends will call me a liar if I don't say this, but The Haunting of Hill House on Netflix is I don't typically watch things more than once. I don't need to. Like I enjoy them and I move on. I'm just one of those people. But I have watched this show beginning to end probably 4 times. I think it is one of the most brilliant and clever things that I've ever watched. I like horror stuff anyway, but I want it to be scary, not gross. And this hits all of that. And I just think it's like, even after having watched it, I was just like, hungrily looking up stuff about it and Reddit stuff and just the explanations behind it, how deep the characters were, just all of it. If I had to just sing praises of anything, it would be that.
Yeah, and I had a guest on a few weeks ago. He runs a theater company out of Concord. He's doing a production in December that's based on The Turn of the Screw, which was the inspiration for that show. On Netflix.
No, this one was Haunting of Hill House.
Haunting of Hill House, okay.
Yeah, The Turn of the Screw was The Bly Manor, which was the 2nd season.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
gotcha.
the same person, same show, but second.
Yeah. So that creepy psychological horror vibe to it.
It's just so good. And I don't know, it's just phenomenal. I really enjoy it. He's got, I think, 4 different shows. And they started with that one, and then they did Midnight Mass, and they just came out with The Fall of the House of Usher that just got released last month.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's the modern adaptation of the Poe story, right?
And it's also very good. It's just very, very well made. I can't say enough good things about it.
Yeah, because I saw the trailer and I was a bit apprehensive, but I haven't given it a fair shake, so I'm gonna sit down and watch it at some point.
Do you like haunting stuff and?
Oh, I mean, Julie, me and my friend and I, we did a 5-episode special on our top 5 horror. My choices were unconventional.
I want to hear.
I mean, my spoilers, by the way, my number 1 choice was Shutter Island.
Oh, love Shutter Island. Love it. Love the book more, but love the movie.
And the reason why is because there are just so many twists and turns. But plus, it was it has such a gothic atmosphere too, and I absolutely love that. And especially being on an island where there's no way to get off, and there's like a storm, and there's like this huge mystery. It's like, oh, please, can I have some more, sir?
My gosh, I think you'll love Haunting of Hill House then.
Yeah. I have so much on my to watch list. But yeah, I mean, it's just running this podcast. It just takes up so much. That's my regular job.
Yeah, I fully understand that. No, but take a week vacation and binge it.
Well, my birthday is coming up at the end of this month, so I am planning on blocking out some time to just screw around. So that may be a good opportunity. But Julie, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to be on this podcast, and then I definitely do. I do plan on having you return for future episodes. So just let me know how things are going. If there's like a particular event that comes up, please let me know so I can bring you back on.
Oh, I would love to. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And I just want to thank everybody for taking the time to watch this episode. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and let me know what your thoughts are on the film scene in North Carolina or in the state that you live in. And please share this video. We are looking to grow our audience. And as always, thank you so much for watching. and I'll catch you on the next one. Ciao. Hello and welcome back to the Movie Pope podcast. And today we have another great guest on the show. We've got Keith Sweeney here. He is going to regale us with tales from beyond the, well, no, not really. He's just going to regale us in tales of filmmaking. But before we dive in, please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share these episodes and videos with everyone that you know. Help the channel grow. Here at the Movie Pope podcast, we like to do a few things here. We like to wear a lot of different hats. Yes, we love reviewing movies and talking about TV shows and saying what we think, if it sucks or if it's great. But we also like chatting to people who work in the industry, kind of get their perspective and their 2 cents on how they got started and their philosophy and advice for working in the industry. It's one of those things that you seldom see on movie podcasts, so I like to think we're blazing a trail here. So we like to think we're offering a public service. I mean, obviously nothing as great as the National Weather Service or FEMA, but, you know, we do our part. Keith, my man, how are you doing on this fine Saturday evening?
I'm doing pretty good, my friend. I hope you are.
Oh, well, I remember telling you earlier before we started recording about my day at the at the garage. It's that same feeling that you get, you know, whenever you have to go to the doctor and the doctor tells you, well, it turns out your lifestyle may be killing you, so you may want to adjust a few things. And you're like, do I choose between taking high blood pressure medication or giving up the Slim Jim? It's.
Oh, see, now that is a tough call, because on a Saturday evening, who doesn't enjoy a Slim Jim?
Exactly. It's Sophie's Choice, basically.
Yeah.
Can I and a legal disclaimer? I mean, here at the Movie Pope podcast, we do not wish to poke fun at anyone who suffers from any traumatic events, such as the Holocaust or any other genocidal events. We strongly condemn the perpetrators of such events, and we stand in support of the victims. And now back to regular programming. So Keith, welcome to the show.
Sure.
Oh, that was ad-lib, by the way. Why didn't I just become an improvisational actor? Everyone keeps telling me I should do that. So Keith, great to have you on the show today. We actually connected through Juli Emmons of the Carolina film community. She kind of hooked us up a few months ago, and we kind of like hammered out the details to kind of set today as the day for our recording. So what I really want to chat with you about is kind of get your perspective on your work and what you do, and maybe offer some advice to up and coming filmmakers, because I studied filmmaking at UNC Greensboro, and I kind of kick myself all the time in the butt because I feel like there are so many resources out there, but I didn't really try to access them. So I feel like this is sort of my penance to try to do that for others. So Keith, why don't you go ahead and introduce us, or introduce yourself to us, I should say, and just tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you come from, and what you do.
All right. Well, thanks for having me on the show. And our mutual friend Juli is a dynamic, amazing, influential character in my life, and I consider myself incredibly fortunate to have met her and connected with Charlotte film community on their inaugural foundation meeting 13 years ago, maybe. So I grew up in New England, and when I moved to the South, I had a very corporate lifestyle: hotel, hospitality, operations, management, numbers, front of the house, interconnections with people. And move forward in my life, I met my husband, and he was an artist, Blaine Miller, actor, writer, director, founder of the Perch live sketch comedy club here in Charlotte.
Oh, that's him?
That was him. That was my husband.
Oh my goodness! Because
right?
I've heard about this. Oh my god, this really is a small city.
He founded the Perch, and he had great success with the run of the Perch for many years. A couple of their writers went on to do big shows in New York, late night talk shows, and fantastic careers. Blaine was an artist. and he liked to create nonstop. He was writing, he was acting, he was directing, he was making models out of mannequins, you name it, he had his hands in it. Completely the opposite mindset of myself. Very corporate, very rigid, very structured. There was often a comparison that if you were to look at his speech patterns, it looked like a series of circles. And my speech patterns was a straight line through the middle. And most of the time, we didn't speak the same language, but occasionally those points would intersect. And my brother and best friend, DJ, and Blaine's best friend, Kathy, came together one day and decided that we wanted to form our own small local independent film production company here in Charlotte called Dalliance Films.
Mm-hmm.
And largely that was because Blaine had grown weary of trying to find the routes to get his own independent works picked up and or produced and or sold without living in LA, living in New York, having a massive agent. In the process, myself and Kathy became the executive producer side, whereas DJ and Blaine were the writer-creator side. Kathy would edit, I would network. And through our networking research, we found the Charlotte film community was getting ready to have their first meeting. Kathy and I got in the car, we went uptown. Julie was hosting the event in the basement of some lounge that no longer exists just off of Moorhead for the first meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And we were immediately hooked at the number of people that were all there for the same reason. Local voice talent, local screen talent, writers, actors, directors, all on the Charlotte scale, trying to find some community to help them achieve their goals, to water cooler conversation, to further their careers. And the concept was brilliant because it was a room full of people looking to collaborate. So we took advantage and became founding members, and we attended a meeting every month. And our exposure to the Charlotte film community just grew exponentially from there. We met so many people that we would have an opportunity to collaborate with, to help connect with other folks, to produce our own works. It was really quite an interesting beginning to our Dalliance film career. It gave us a lot of incentive and motivation to continue to produce and develop the things that we were working on.
Right.
And then after competing in the annual film events that the Charlotte film community would have, we had produced 2, 3, 4 short films, our own small independent feature-length film, a series of trailers that we were trying to shop around, and a number of other scripts. And we felt we were making good progress and tracks, end roads to getting our anything produced. And then recession smacked everybody down. All the potentially interested funds and talent that we had reached out to gain had dried up, and everybody was starting to hold on to their cash. So we had to kind of reevaluate what was going to happen.
Right.
And Blaine and Kathy continued to write. They continued to produce works that the hope was eventually we would be able to maybe shop the scripts around to get picked up. And one of Blaine's scripts even won an award from a competition out in LA, and they brought us out there to try to shop the script around to small companies like the Sci-Fi Channel at the time that made movies for $1 million. Unfortunately, that didn't work out in our favor, but we all continued to pursue things in our own right. DJ went on to be a script supervisor for major TV series, major streaming series, major motion pictures. Blaine continued to write and create. Kathy stayed on the corporate side, and I myself actually transitioned out of hospitality and tourism into actual on-set film work in the role of craft service. And so now, for the last 12 years, I have spent all of my film career taking care of cast and crew on film sets, everything from commercials and photo shoots to series and major motion pictures. And it's probably the most exciting, exhilarating, nerve-wracking change I've ever made in my entire life.
Well, I mean, well, that's fascinating because because when it comes to working in that side of the industry, whenever I've spoken with people who've gotten their start, it just seems like they're coming from a far left field because because when you hear their story, you're like, Really, you left that? Like, that's a huge leap of faith. Like, what made you decide that that this was something worth pursuing?
So if you're talking about the craft service side, I'll be quite honest. I didn't really have a choice. I tend to be one of those people that once I'm in my safety zone, once I've got my routine, once I've got the structure of the things that I can predict and I can manage, I tend to stay there and I just finesse it, and I adjust as need be, but everything fits within a box. There's parameters, there's guidelines, there's 3-ring binders, there's procedures. And I had a lucrative career with a global brand here in Charlotte, and one day found myself out of a job. And it was the second time in 23 years of hospitality that I found myself in this situation. And I had lost all faith in my future. I wasn't sure where I was going, didn't want to invest myself again. And Blaine just looked at me and said, well, you should do craft service. I had no idea what that was. No clue. Had never been on set, but everybody in my life through Kathy, Blaine, DJ, Julie, they all worked in film. Everybody was some sort of artist or creator. And they all said, yeah, you should do that. So I sat my butt down and I logged onto the computer and I emailed everybody I could find in the North Carolina film directory, basically asking for a conversation. After 11 emails, one person called me back and we spoke for 2 hours on the phone. And the next thing you know, I was helping this person on a Subway commercial, and they had introduced me to another craft service person who was playing the key role on the first season of Banshee, which was filmed here in Charlotte. I went to meet her. 2 weeks later, I was working on her film set, and 3 weeks after that, I was running the show. She had apparently overbooked and needed to be in another city on another show, and decided that I could handle it. So I went from a corporate hospitality career, managing things by the book, to being thrown into craft service on somebody else's truck with absolutely no clue what I was doing.
But that's the thing, though, because when you've worked in the hospitality industry for an X number of years, when you find yourself working at craft services, don't you think that it would sort of be like a smooth transition because most of the concepts, most of what you're doing is pretty similar? Well,
you would think that, but it required a lot of my rigid structure to be released.
Well, how so?
So a film crew is not a hotel guest. A hotel guest, you've got between 30 seconds and 3 minutes to form a relationship and hopefully develop some form of brand loyalty while meeting their standard expectations. There's a reason they choose this brand over that brand.
Right.
When they have a place to stay. And in a film set's nothing like that at all. These are not traveling businessmen with a corporate credit card. These are film crew that are in the trenches, often overworked, underpaid, maybe not given the respect that they deserve, and they're working 12 to 14-hour days.
Right.
And my misconception about craft service at first was that in addition to acquiring the things that they would need and providing them all day, I was also going to end up being their dad. And a lot of folks would come into the craft service truck and they would start helping themselves. And my brain could not wrap around that because you don't go to a restaurant, walk into the kitchen and cook your own steak. So,
right.
But the reality is that everything that I would provide, everything that the team of craft service provided, it was our responsibility to protect it and to serve it, but it belongs to the crew. And the beauty when I had my awakening was that now, instead of between 30 seconds and 3 minutes, I have 3 weeks, 3 months, sometimes 6 months to develop relationships with these people on the film set, to get to know them, to know that this guy needs a PG tips at this part of the day, and this guy only prefers this type of gummy bear, and that is the thing that is going to get them through whatever hell has been wrapped upon them through the course of their film day. And while also giving them that bartender or barber safe haven when they come to the craft service truck, so that they could have a place to step away from the film set, the life that it is, and have that safe space, whether it's to simply decompress or share a good laugh or make themselves a sandwich and take a breath and then go back to work. The role went from corporate provider to dad. And
A caretaker, basically.
yeah.
Okay.
You know, if you really embrace what we do as craft service, our job is to pay attention to the crew, not just, you know, maintain the snacks and make sure their sandwiches out and make sure that the coffee's fresh and delicious and everybody has a LaCroix. It's to pay attention to the crew, to make sure that they are healthy and they are productive, and that if they look overworked, it's your job to notice and say something to somebody, or to pull somebody aside and give them a break. And quite often, a film set is filled with a lot of young folks that are trying to get into the industry in any way they know how. And, you know, if you see them struggling, you get an opportunity perhaps to have some sort of mentorship with somebody, give them a little guidance, dust them off, and put them back in the game. And I had no idea that this would end up being my role. And I cherish the relationships with the film set, the film family, my brothers and sisters, exponentially more than I ever cherished the relationships that I developed in the hotel industry, because I've got 6 months sometimes to learn to care about these people and what makes them special, the unique thing that they bring to their craft, which creates that group sense of pride on a film set. Whether you're hauling cable or serving coffee or setting a light or putting makeup on somebody's face, you know, it's 250 people sometimes to make somebody look good on screen for 30 seconds. And it's an appreciation that I never had for the industry prior to actually working in the industry.
So, I mean, that's so fascinating, because you're basically like Sam from Cheers. Everybody comes to you and you lend that sympathetic ear to kind of help them get through the day, basically.
I will take that compliment. Yes, sir.
I mean, but because that's the thing. Because and please forgive me for sounding so crass. I always just thought that, you know, that craft service people were kind of like, you know, at the bottom of the totem pole, because they really didn't do much apart from just put the spread out and just stand back and let people, you know, take what they want, and then you kind of clean up the scraps afterwards. But that isn't the case whatsoever, because, you know, because there's more to it than just simply putting food out for people to eat.
There is, as a matter of fact, and I hope you don't share that preconceived notion with any producers, because quite a few producers like to think that anybody with 2 coolers and a pickup truck can do craft service.
That's the impression I have gotten from some people. Just so
you know, not to say that we're all this person. We don't all obviously take the job the same way that I do, but I've made my life out of caring for other people in one fashion or another, and to find my personal niche and my personal approach, and then to share that with so many other craft service people. Like, there are examples. There's one guy. Here's a couple of good stories for you.
Yeah.
So there was this one guy who was an A camera on a show, and he was the biggest. He was the biggest asshole. Can I say that? He was the biggest asshole.
Yeah, you can. You can.
He was the biggest asshole I'd ever met on a film set. There was absolutely nothing that I could do that made his day better. Nothing. And then I found out one day that he had a penchant for a particular flavor brand of a gummy bear. And it wasn't something that I could get at a local store, so I had to order it. And then when I got it in, I just quietly slipped it on his cart that day and didn't say anything to him. And he never made it a point to seek out who brought them and say thank you. But the other 9 people in that department came by the truck one at a time to thank me for that little gesture, because for that day, he was a little bit less of an asshole to them. And that's the day that I knew that my job had more meaning than just making sure the coolers were full and the sandwiches came out at 4 hours. That was the first experience where I knew that I had what I did had an impact on these people that we spent the entire day with, sometimes months with at a time. And so my perception of how I approached my job from that one day with that one cameraman changed moving forward. There are some folks, there's a dolly grip that I know. He is the hardest working person I think I've ever witnessed. He will not stop and take a break. Doesn't matter. And my job, I took it upon myself, was to get in front of him, stand in front of him, get in his way, and make sure that he stopped for a moment, make sure that he drank some water, make sure that he ate something, because he wouldn't. And that is how I surround myself with folks that I think have the same approach. And we all don't like every single crew person on set. But if there are 3 of us working in craft service, we all have our favorites and we all have those that we dislike. But the rule is everybody on the film set gets one person, at least in craft service, who will take care of them when the others are like, nope, I don't want anything to do with that guy. So everybody gets attention, personalized one way or another. And if one of my partners does something for somebody that I don't care about, I'll give them a side eye, but I will definitely keep my mouth shut, because that's the job. Our job is to make sure that whoever it is, they have what they need to get through their day.
Right. So know your place, but kind of help keep things, moving along. Right.
Yeah. But we also have so much fun. There are so many incredibly cool stories. So watching a scene in the second Halloween movie that came out, have you seen it?
I haven't, no, but I've been wanting to see it.
There's a scene in there where there's a couple, a senior couple in their living room, and basically, you watch them get murdered. You watch them get slaughtered. And I watched the scene and I'm laughing because the couch that is directly behind the couple, I am on the floor on my knees behind that couch, hunkering down, because I was on set at that moment, passing snacks and beverages around to the film crew that were stuck inside the set and could not get out to Crafty when they called rolling, and I had to drop to my knee and hide behind the furniture. And then as soon as they called cut, I stood up again with this platter full of food and made my way around the room to all of the camera and the ADs and everybody else that did not have an opportunity to step out of an incredibly hot set to get something refreshing. So there's a lot of fun stories that relate in that fashion, and it's exciting. It's something I don't think I could have ever envisioned myself doing.
Now, did they know you were there?
A lot of the crew did, and they laugh. There's times where I get stuck in the bathroom, or I'm hunkered down right below somebody. I have so many of those stories where I'm hunkered down, somebody's walking by wearing very little attire, or I get stuck behind a bedpost during a lovemaking scene. Even though it's supposed to be a closed set, you get stuck sometimes when you're trying to get to and take care of your crew, or you're trying to clean up. And somebody calls action and you've got to hide. And then all of a sudden they call cut and you come around the corner with a platter of snacks and everybody starts cheering.
I just have this funny image of you like on a film set, like a World War II film set or Vietnam film set, and you're just like running through the grass, and they're like, "All right, action!" And you drop to the ground.
Yep. That is quite often exactly what it is. You have to watch where you're stepping because there's cable and track and a variety of equipment everywhere. You have to know which direction you can and cannot step. And is it too crowded in that corner? And then all of a sudden somebody calls, says cameras up, and you have to. If you're in the wrong place, you've got to tuck in a corner. You've got to drop to your knee. You could set something up outside, but then the 5 people that are at the door would get it, and nobody in the set would have access to the snacks. So my job is to make sure that they do.
Okay, yeah, because that leads me to the next question, because I've always assumed that craft services, they're kind of like tucked away, like on the other side of the studio, and you're just standing there, and people kind of go up to you in between breaks and kind of help themselves. But but from what you're saying, you've actually had to like roll up your sleeves, take the tray, and run into the action, yourself to kind of, get the food out to these people.
Well, what I find interesting is that, my particular role on set varies based on the region. So it's craft service in LA versus New York versus Canada versus Charlotte are all very different in their approach. So I handle craft service the way that I was taught for this region. So yeah, we have a main setup someplace, 3 or 4 tables, 5 coolers, everything you can think of under the sun on the table. But that's 60% of the crew have the freedom to move around and come visit when they're feeling peckish. But then, pardon me, there's a whole other segment of the crew that they don't get that freedom. Usually the shooting crew, the camera, the ADs, the first AD, the director, right on set, they don't ever leave. They might send somebody to get something for them, but a human being's stomach goes from breakfast to 2 hours later, like, I could really use something. And then 2 hours later, they need something a little heftier because they still have 2 more hours before lunch. So finding what that is it a hot set? Is it cold outside? Is it smoky in there? Do you think they're dehydrated? And picking something that's going to help them get through, usually proteins of some sort, making sure there's a variety for every restriction, whether they don't eat nuts or they're allergic to dairy or they don't eat gluten. There's got to be something for everybody. And it's just a snack, but it's just enough to hold them through. We have to get into them if you take pride in your job to take care of the crew, because that's our job, is to care for them.
Now, another thing I want to kind of like just chat with you about. So catering, so craft service isn't the same as catering, correct?
Correct. Catering is 2 specific meals a day, usually a breakfast before call. It's a large to do, and then 6 hours in from call. They're almost always set up that way. It's union contract regulations, certain types of meals fed at certain times of day. Crew is given a break. But a 10-hour shoot day is a 12-hour workday for most people. A 12-hour workday is a 14 to 16-hour workday for most people. And those 2 meals are not enough. We are catering and craft service. We often help each other out, with a, hey, do you have any of this? Or I can't get to the store or whatever. But we are very much independent and apart from one another.
So I want to ask you a few more questions about craft service, because really this is a side of filmmaking you rarely hear about. So I'm really fascinated by this. So for starters, when it comes to let's say you're on a film project, right? Do you actively go out and find employment and say, hey, are you guys looking for a craft services person, or do they contact you? How does that work out?
I think the responsibility generally falls to the crew person. Technically, every single crew person on a film set is an independent contractor. Quite often, especially in the areas away from New York or LA, where there isn't an established studio system, a production will come into your town, and not only will they hire you as the key to run the department, but they will also hire you because you have the equipment, and they will lease the equipment from you, and that is often why you get the job. Most of the positions are unionized, so when a production comes into town, they will often ask the local union rep for the list, and they start from there. But quite often, it's also word of mouth. A UPM or a production supervisor has worked with you in this region in the past, and they just tell so-and-so, go ahead and call this guy, and that's your first conversation. And the first 5 or 6 years I was trying to cut my teeth in the industry, it was always a fight. I would look at the weekly newsletter from the union at potential and rumored upcoming productions, and I would reach out. I would search on IMDb for emails and contact information. I would travel into the Wilmington or Charleston or even the Savannah area and walk into a production office with my business card, my resume, and a tray full of snacks, and just try to get in front of somebody. But quite often a position like craft service is one of those that productions don't necessarily travel you for. Every show needs one, but if production doesn't value what you bring to the table in the same way that they would, a best boy, electric, a dimmer operator, et cetera, they won't do it. They'll just find anybody with a pickup truck and a couple of coolers and call it a day. There are some producers, however, that are smart enough to be incredibly pro crew, and they know a crew runs on their stomach and they need somebody to do the job. And once I've had the opportunity to get a couple of really good projects under my belt and start making friends with people on set, because I started letting go of my control issues, I started developing that network, and largely the network is how we get our jobs now. I mean, there's always a list, but it never hurts to have friends who can recommend you when they get the call before you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So this leads me to another question, and this may sound like a dumb question.
Not at all.
Is there a union for craft services people?
Absolutely. So
Okay.
we belong in IATSE, IATSE. My local district in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Savannah is 491.
Okay. Yeah, because I've heard of those guys, but I never thought craft services people fell under that.
Well, we didn't used to. I think Crafty started falling under IA probably right around the same time that I got into the business, maybe a little before. I'm kind of fuzzy on the numbers, but from the stories I've heard or things I've been told, is it wasn't always covered.
Okay, so
now
it's more. So this is more of just a recent thing, then, right?
Yeah. So, but obviously, North Carolina is a right to work state, so the production doesn't have to hire a union craft service from out of town. However, if it's a union show and there's a craft service person available in that union district, and the show doesn't hire them, they will receive pressure from the union that says, you have a non-union person working a union position on a union show. You need to hire this. And they may or may not cave, but it's generally not an issue. Has been smaller budgets tend to be a little more particular because of where they're putting the money. Larger budget shows are like, yeah, whatever, let's throw cash at it and see what happens.
So is there a benefit to being in IATSE, or does that just depend on where you mainly work?
I absolutely think that there is a benefit. When I was a younger man, I didn't so much believe in the unity of brotherhood and union strong, etc. But I've come to find out, especially working on a film set, being surrounded by as many unions as are represented in film production, that as complicated as the politics may be on occasion, there really is strength. There really is protection. There really is solidarity. And, the corporate dollar is the corporate dollar. Not every UPM or executive producer is an asshole, but their job is still to represent the studio and to get the job done. And some of them are willing to push the boundaries of their crew a little bit. And that is where the union steps in and says, no, you can't do that. You can't do that at all. We'll walk out on your ass. Or if you want to continue to do that, that's fine, but it's going to cost you this. Whereas a non-represented position doesn't have those protections, and quite often gets taken advantage of. Our PAs, for example, production assistants, a show does not get done. Nothing is produced without PAs on set. They're often young folks right out of film school trying to get their teeth cut, make connections, figure out where they want to be in this industry, and they're not represented by union protection, and so they're very easily abused or overworked, and they're underpaid and sometimes in unsafe conditions. And that's one of those things that a lot of the unions and districts are trying to fight for. But it's just an example. I think that if my position wasn't protected, I might face similar circumstances.
Yeah, and that's what we saw last year with the two strikes, because there's this concern that that they aren't being I guess treated very well, especially with the rise of AI. But do you do you think your union or any unions that are similar, do you think that there might come a point where they kind of feel like, what, enough's enough? Because from what you're from what you're telling me, it sounds like y'all are a pretty patient bunch. Like, you can just take it on the chin and keep going.
Well, I don't know that that's. It really depends on the day. So I'm going to say largely, I think the union is always going to be the benefit. There are obviously going to be those of us that have discontent. A lot of misconception is the union is not an employment service. Their job is not to find you a job. Their job is to protect you when you have one, to represent you, to put your name in front of other people. It's up to you as the crew person to do the job and maintain it. It's the union's job to help negotiate on your behalf for the hourly rates and when you get breaks. But landing the job, that's not their role. So a lot of people get mad about that. And then some folks get mad about the politics, because every union, every representative of a union is going to approach their job a little differently. And a crew person might think that they should do it this way instead of that way. There's always going to be grumblings, but my personal opinion, my personal experience is that it's better to have than to not. With the strikes, however, it's a different approach it's a different concept to take 6 or 8 months of unemployment as a knock on the chin versus, a 14-hour day in rough conditions and bad weather, and then get mad because production just bought you pizza at the end of the day. But that's a day. You get to go home. You may be tired come Monday because you didn't get your full turnaround, and the studio might have tried to break a contract by forcing you to come in earlier. But those individual experiences are not as prevalent as just simply being on strike, where it is in your face every single day that you're not taking in any money, that you're getting further behind, that you may have to sell your house, kind of stuff. So it's definitely a different blow to the chin.
Right. So Keith, I mean, do you? I'm trying to find a way to phrase it that doesn't sound, too disrespectful. But if someone, if someone wants to break into the film industry, why would they consider looking at craft services, for instance, as opposed to thinking
That's an easy one.
or
That's actually an easy one. Every single person on set, every single person from the executive producer down to a PA, every single person knows who craft service is. Every single one of them. They all know who Crafty is. Crafty knows who all of they are, because it's our job to know who they are. In a 14-hour day, it doesn't matter who you are. You need a cup of coffee, you need a bottle of water, you need a sandwich, you need a bag of sour pickles, you need a Reese peanut butter cup. Everybody knows who Crafty is. And if you want to do something else in film, Crafty is one of the best positions to be able to network. You get on set. If you're in Crafty and you want to be a stuntman, if you want to work in electric, if you want to work in props, as long as you put in the effort while you're doing your craft service job to take a moment and engage with somebody in that desired field path, you're going to make a friend. You're going to have this opportunity to ask questions. And on a 4.5 month show running 10 episodes, you have lots of time to talk to whoever's in props and find out about the art department. You have lots of time to interact with set deck as they come and go during the day. You get the chance to make that personal connection and find an end road to get where you want to go. And I'm all about that. Younger me in a corporate career was trained somebody to stay in one position. I can't hold people back anymore. I can't look at somebody and say, well, you only want this one show because you're going to do that. And I can't keep training people. I need somebody that's going to stick with me. My job is to help you. If you come into my department, if you work on one of my trucks and you're on craft service, as long as you are doing all of the work that I need you to do, if that helps you further your career path into something else, I'm going to be so happy. I'm going to be so proud of you, because you took advantage of that opportunity and you owned it and you made it yours. And there are quite a few examples in my career where that's exactly what happened. Some of my favorite people in other departments started in mine, and they took advantage of getting to know the crew simply by taking care of them.
So that leads me to another question. So So there have been instances where you've taken people under your wing and they've said, you know what, I do like working in props, or I do want to learn more about cinematography or this and that. Did you kind of like push them in that direction, or did you kind of say, hey, maybe you should go talk to this person, or did you kind of talk to whoever was in charge of that department, say, hey, I got someone here who might be interested in maybe doing this work? How did that play out?
All of the above. There have been at least 6 that I'm aware of that have started in my department that I took in for one reason or another, and have had an opportunity to move on and do other things. And whether it's me encouraging them to, hey, deliver this to so-and-so and strike up a conversation, or me mentioning to somebody in a key in another department who I happen to be friends with, or I have taken care of over the years, hey, would you talk to this person and at least give them some guidance or something? Any means necessary. I'm a father and a grandfather, and I've spent my life taking care of other people in various fashions, not just cooking for them and putting Band-Aids on their knees, but giving them support. And it wasn't until I was in my 30s that I learned to adapt the lift each other up concept in my personal approach to life. And, I think craft service is a great avenue for me personally to pursue that. If I can help somebody do something better for themselves, then I have made my mark. I may not be getting my name on the screen as written and directed or acted, but I'm making my mark. I'm important to somebody because I've helped them get someplace else. And that, to me, at the end of the day, is my reward.
So basically you're paying it forward.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. So Keith, I definitely do want to be respectful of your time, but I can't thank you enough for being on the podcast. And I definitely do want to bring you back because there are so many more questions boiling in my mind about craft services. I mean, because think about it, you guys are the unsung heroes of the film set, and from what you've told me tonight, you guys are really like the essential people, because if you hadn't gotten those special flavor gummy bears, I mean, my God, that could have gone in a whole nother direction.
And I like to think that we are the unsung heroes. Did you know that Jamie Lee Curtis, God love her, I love working on her sets, but she does not like working at night. You know how she gets through it? M&Ms. That's how she gets through working at night. She eats M&Ms. That is what keeps her focused. That is her energy. That is her caffeine. That is her. All right. I'm gonna get this done. Consummate professional that she is. But Frances McDormand, she likes to sit on the tailgate of a grip truck and watch the sunset if everybody else is doing it and we're in a good location. So you find these moments with these people, and for me, I find those moments through giving them that little thing. But having a bag of peanut M&Ms in the freezer, or a jar of Nutella hidden in the back of a refrigerator someplace for an actor, those are the cool stories. Those are my favorite parts of what I do. In addition to the interactions and the lifting them up, because trust me, 120 brothers and sisters occasionally get on your nerves. Because we're all adults, and the trash can is right there. But it's probably I think the most rewarding career experience that I've had in my life. And when I was a younger man, I would have never envisioned this for myself. I had a very rigid and structured vision of my future, and the color and the texture and the fabric of the people on a film set that make movies and TV shows and even commercials come alive it continues to blow me away to this day. And I consider it a gift that I get to experience it through the means that I was given when I was born. This way, this is my thing, and I get to be a part of it. And it's an awesome experience for me.
Well, Keith, you really, really are a trooper, and I salute you. I really do, because I mean, you never think about it until you hear about it, but then when you do, it's like, wow, like you really, really do make a difference. So Keith, if people want to learn more about you, if they want to reach out to you, how can they do that?
Well, I do have an IMDb page. I don't know that I've ever received messages from there. But I also have, I can be reached through my website. It's keithcraftservice.com. My phone number is on there. A link to my craft service Instagram page is there. and hey, put my name out there because it's filming season and everybody's gearing up and daddy needs to work.
Yeah, and the strikes are over now, so I mean, there should definitely be more, within the next few months. But Keith, before we wrap up, as this is a movie podcast, I have to ask the obligatory question:
As you should.
Is there a movie or TV show that you've seen recently that you feel like is the best thing ever? You just want to get on the rooftop and shout to everybody.
Wow. So oddly enough, I don't know if recently falls into my category, but I have three movies that are always my go-to based on my need.
Okay.
My first is The King's Speech. For watching because of the message of the relationship in that. The next one is the J.J. Abrams release of Star Trek in 2009.
Oh, the first one, right?
Yeah, the reimagining with Chris Pine as Captain.
Okay.
Yeah. That is my disconnect me from the world, get involved, and just watching a movie release. And honestly, one of the two favorites that I've worked on were Halloween, the first of the three that came out a few years ago with Jamie Lee Curtis, was a fantastic experience, as was Three Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri, which was filmed up in Asheville. Those movies, as heavy as they may be, they fill me with pride, they fill me with joy. If anybody ever mentions it, I don't care if I've seen them 100 times. Put them on. Let's watch.
I did. I mean, you're the first person to actually mention a Star Trek movie, so that leads me to ask: are you a Trekkie?
Oh my God! if there's a bit of Star Trek trivia, I'm your guy.
Just out of curiosity, do you watch the Shuttle Pod show?
Not yet, but now that I'm hearing about it, I'm curious.
Yeah. So have you ever seen Have you ever seen Enterprise?
Yeah, of course.
So basically, the guy who plays Trip and the guy who plays Reed,
yeah,
they started a podcast, I think 2 years ago.
Oh my God!
And I mean, they've had everybody from Jonathan Frakes to LeVar Burton to people who work in every aspect of Trek, of the Trek shows, and it's because of them that inspired me to launch this podcast, because they brought in so many people who worked everywhere from craft services to like set design to props, and just gave them voice to talk about about their work. So,
well, now I have a lot of homework to do. I've watched Ready Room with Will Wheaton continuously, for years, but now a Shuttle Pod, huh? Okay.
It's called the Shuttle Pod Show. In their most recent episode, they had George Takei on there.
Oh my God.
I think you would love that podcast, just because just because they just talk Trek throughout the show. Well, and you'll love the segment too. They have a segment where they do Star Trek trivia, where basically basically the producer is playing against the two hosts, and they try to answer Star Trek trivia. And what's even funnier is that sometimes they'll ask them, trivial questions about what happened on Enterprise, and the two actors are like, "I don't remember any of this." I'm like, "Are you freaking serious? You guys were in it 80% of the time."
Wow. So I have a lot of homework to do now, and I'm going to pull out my Audible any minute. And but it's funny that you mentioned Enterprise, because I'm introducing my partner to Star Trek. He grew up a Star Wars fan, and I'm introducing him to Star Trek. And all the reasons that I live my life the way that I do, that come from my life watching Star Trek. And he's just started watching Enterprise, and we're still in the first season. And me being the nerd that I am, I get to go back and say, ooh, right here, you this thing that just happened. This is why in Next Generation or all the other shows, these procedures are taken for granted, because they were made here. Yellow alert means shields up and automatically puts power to the phasers and all that stuff.
Yeah, don't forget about the Prime Directive too.
Exactly. We just watched that the episode last night, where Captain Archer came across the planet with Dr. Phlox, and there's two species there that live together, and one of them
yes.
That's the one. I was like, this is the foundation of the medical Prime Directive. They can't interfere. They can't give them warp drive. He's like, oh, really? I was like, yep, this is the foundation right here.
So you know what my favorite episode is?
Please.
It's the one where a certain Brent Spiner returned to play Dr. Eric Soong.
Oh yeah.
And he's got the he's got the they're not the descendants, but they're like sort of like the super babies from from the eugenics wars. And oh my god, he does such a wonderful performance. I've seriously considered emailing the podcast asking them, when the hell are you getting Scott Bakula on? Because and nothing against Bill Shatner. I think Scott Bakula plays a wonderful Captain Archer.
His role was designed to be, he wasn't the swarthy swashbuckling. He was designed to represent the original wholesome idea of what the Federation was intended to be, helping one another out. They needed a wholesomeness. They needed a grounding center of integrity and good intention. And Captain Archer was written to be that character. And Scott Bakula nailed it all the way from beginning to end. And speaking of Brent Spiner, good for that actor getting to play 15 different roles over the course of his Star Trek career.
All of them named Soong, by the way.
All named Soong, by the way. But funny story is many years ago, before I met my husband, he was in LA and he was in a grocery store with our son, and he was being fussy, and Brent Spiner picked him up and held him, and he calmed down while my husband was checking out at the counter. And then years later, I met him when he worked on Outcast, filmed up here in Charlotte. And I just had one of those nerd moments where I walked in and the base camp PA brought me in because she knew I was a Star Trek freak. And then I walked in and I froze and I just smiled at him. I shook his hand and I didn't even get a selfie and I was so mad. But, what an incredibly nice guy. And God, yeah. Now, see, I got
the one last question I want to ask you. What did you think about the series finale? These Are the Voyages. Because I was ambivalent, to be honest with you. I could care less either way, but I know that episode has a lot of haters, so I just want to see what you thought.
The only reason I had to be bothered by the episode was that at the time it was cut off, and I felt that there was so much more Trek to tell, and I was a little bothered by the fact that it was written to be deliberately bland. But you're also coming off of, if you're a true Star Trek fan, you're now
Legacy Trek. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, you're mentally comparing it to the season finale of Voyager, where it bursts through the warp tunnel to meet the Starfleet ships that then escort her home. You're comparing it to the end of Next Generation, where all of a sudden, after 7 years, Picard is sitting down at a table playing cards with his crew, going, "I should have done this sooner." So, next to those previous emotional experiences, if you're connected with Trek, the ending of Enterprise was kind of ambivalent and neutral, but it left the page open to continue writing the stories and continuous adventures. I didn't get the sense from that episode that it was finished, but I didn't get the sense from that episode that it was coming back either.
Well, I was going to say, because there was an episode where they were interviewing Doug Drexler, and Doug basically said, had they been given another 3 seasons, when season 5 came along, they would have done a refit to the Enterprise, to the NX-01. Yep. So the NX-01 would have begun to look like a nascent Constitution class starship with the secondary hull and everything. Oh my God! Okay, seriously, we need to set up. We need to set up a time where we talk nothing but Trek. Like,
I would love that.
And Keith, you want to know what's funny is that I've got, because I'm a huge science fiction fan, but I have more Star Trek T-shirts than I do Star Wars T-shirts. That should tell you something right there. And I don't want to give, and I feel like I'm giving away my age, but I was born 2 months after the premiere of Next Generation, so
God,
I have a huge connection to that. And you know how a lot of people say, which Star Trek show is their favorite? Mine was Enterprise, because I came of age when that show came out. So,
I get that.
So people,
1,000%.
So people can say Enterprise sucks because the intro, the song was inappropriate, blah 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 blah. I'm like, I'm like, dude, shut up. I mean, for what it's worth, this laid the foundation for what Shrek would be. So I'm sorry, but you can go screw yourself if you don't like it. But that's my show you're talking about.
No, I get it. I get it 1,000%. I do have to skip past the song, but I do know it by heart because I understand the human connection, the striving for greatness that we're going to overcome and achieve emotional sentiment that's connected to every word in that song. But having watched the original series, on WPIX out of New York late at night as a kid when I was watching, when I was babysitting, and then Next Generation when I was a young teenager coming into my own identity and trying to find my place in the world, and the messages that Star Trek would send, and then the more dark and religious profile of DS9, and then Voyager, the resolute approach to life and humanity, and everybody looks out for one another, is part of my religious upbringing through Star Trek. And then Enterprise came out, and I love the historical data. It gives me such a sense of all of the things that I fell in love with. I'm getting to witness how they came to be. But the song, I'm like, no, I gotta skip past this, or I'll mute it, because I love watching the opening credits. I love watching the sequence as Enterprise grows from a clipper ship to a starship.
Excellent. Well, before we get carried away, remember to like, comment, subscribe, and Keith, once again, thank you so much for being on the show, and we'll catch you on the flip side.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Before you are dismissed, Mr. Stiff Sticker, I suggest you count your bees. You may find that one of them is missing.
And welcome back to the Movie Pope podcast. And today we have a great guest today. We've got Zach Reiner here, and he's going to talk to us about working in the industry and doing something that we've never heard before. He walked away. What was the motive behind that? And how did he end up in beekeeping of all places? But before we dive in, remember to like, comment, subscribe, and please share this video and others like it with everyone else that you know. Help the audience grow. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and let's dive in. Zach, my man, how are you doing this fine November day?
Luca, I'm fantastic. It's an honor to be on your show. I appreciate you reaching out, and I'm looking forward to talking life, just talking my story, talking film, talking beekeeping, and I'm grateful and honored that you would choose to even talk to me on your birthday. Happy birthday, man.
Thank you. Yes, and at the time of recording, it is my birthday, but I'm not going to say how old I am because I'm a very vain person. Zach, I noticed that you have a full head of hair. You'll find this pretty funny. My hair started turning white at 25, and as soon as I found that white strand of hair, I was like, nope, not having it, and I shaved my head.
Oh, let's go, man.
And I've pretty much been bald, ever since then. So
respect. I've done all the hairs. My hair is thinning. I think I probably need to let it go soon. It's starting to get a little thin, but I've been bald for a while. I enjoyed that. How do you like being bald?
I'll tell you this. A lot of people thought I was a little bit weird because they all said the same thing. They said, I don't see that little white strand of hair. What are you talking about? And I'm like, you don't see it. It's there. Like, and it's kind of counterintuitive, because if you want people to not notice it, you don't draw attention to yourself. But I'm the sort of person who does the exact opposite. So after a while, people were like, oh yeah, I do see that white strand of hair, and it got me even more paranoid. So
more self-conscious. I get it.
Yeah. And plus, once the pandemic hit and everything started going haywire, I kind of thought, you know what, I was pretty much ahead of the curve, because now I don't need to worry about going and getting a haircut. I can just spend $2 buying shaving cream and razors at the dollar store, and doing it every other day. And and I'll tell you this: in the wintertime, it can be a bit hectic, but that's why you wear a hat. But in the summertime, oh man, I mean, every little breeze that hits, it's like, oh, it's a godsend.
I can't imagine a bald head in this southern heat. Being from the north, like you could get away with being bald, all year round, whatever. You're not going to get baked. But being down here with a bald head, I don't know how you do it, but props to you.
Well, I mean, the first few months was a bit difficult, but after a while, you kind of get used to it. So usually So usually after a day when you get like a little bit of hair growing, that's when my head gets really itchy. And there have been nights where I'll lay in bed and I'm like, I can't sleep. My head is so itchy. So I have to get up, and it's like 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'm going to, and I go in and shave my head. And then when I go back to bed, I'm like, this feels right. And then I fall asleep right away.
That's
That-
awesome. Yeah, when that
that's
5 o'clock shadow starts creeping in on the top of your head, yeah, that's when you know. That's when you know.
Yep, exactly.
I can't imagine. That's got to be pretty itchy.
Exactly. So, Zach, let's go ahead and get started.
Yeah, let's dive in.
So originally, I interviewed Juli Emmons of the Carolina film community, and by the way, I'll have a link down below if y'all want to catch that episode. But Julie mentioned you as after the episode ended, and she mentioned that you were a beekeeper. And as soon as she said that, I was like, I have to talk to this guy. Like, that has been my fantasy for 10 years. I have always dreamt of retiring to upstate South Carolina with a beekeeping farm and just spending my entire days just, waddling out to the hive and just checking to see if there was honey. And I even bought a lapel pin with a bronze bee.
Let's
on
go.
it. So I'm like, so
Beautiful.
that's how serious I am, and I'm seriously considering getting one of those wax stamps with a bee on it, just because it's just such a weird fascination that I have.
I support it. I support it.
But before we go into the exciting part about beekeeping, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself, and you can go into as many details as possible, because I just love hearing about people's lives and about their work in the industry, which you said that you used to work in the film industry.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll give you all the details, because I think it really plays into it makes where I'm at now make a little more sense. I went to school up in Indiana, middle of nowhere in the cornfields. I'm from Cincinnati. I went in actually as an environmental science major. My freshman year, I had no idea what I wanted to do, but I knew that from birth, really, I have loved the outdoors. I've loved animals. I've loved nature. I've loved being in that world. And so I went to school to study that, and really dove into that major for a year and a half, 2 years. And a bunch of random things happened, and I got paired up with a roommate who was a communications major. And I had taken all of some of the more intense classes freshman year, diving into the environmental science world. I liked it. I didn't love it. And so while I'm in this season of just kind of questioning, like, am I in the right place? Am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Do I love this stuff? Could I see myself doing this the rest of my life? My roommate was doing projects that I found myself doing in my free time. He was working on video stuff. He was messing with audio. He was mixing some things. He was doing some editing. And I'm like, you're getting graded to do what I do in my free time, like what I enjoy doing when I'm not doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And so that season, I think it was my sophomore summer, I made the decision to switch majors from my environmental science to what then was called, I think, film and video production. Granted, we didn't touch physical film. We never touched it. Why that was in the name of the major, I have no idea. But that really kind of shifted and changed the direction that I would continue down really until now. So that kind of fueled that. That was the story of kind of how I started. So senior year, fast forward, we're looking for jobs. I'm putting my resume out there, and I find a connection through one of my advisors to a place down in Charlotte. I'd never heard of Charlotte. I didn't know where North Carolina was. I couldn't put it out on a map. I really couldn't, which is really embarrassing. I just was never good at geography, and I really hadn't been this far south before. I've got family in Atlanta, but we never touched the East Coast. We just went straight down for holidays, and then we go back up to Ohio. So I don't know. I was living under a rock for most of my childhood, I would say. But anyway, moved to Charlotte. I had the opportunity to start out with an internship. It wasn't a full-time position. It was stipend. It was just kind of to get my feet and my hands wet and into the production world. And so they let me do a bunch of random stuff. I was doing a little bit of editing. I was on set, doing some bigger productions, kind of working as a PA then. I didn't know what a PA was at that point, but doing a lot of the same jobs that a PA does on set. And so that 3 months was over, And during one of those bigger productions with this company, I made a connection with someone in this contract freelance production world in Charlotte. And man, it was a gift. That relationship ended up just to be a complete godsend. And I guess my work and my effort stood out, and she inquired to see if I was going to even be staying in Charlotte after the internship. And I had to really ponder, I had to think about it, because I didn't know what was next. I didn't really have a plan after the internship, other than to see if I could apply for some kind of full-time position, part-time position at where I was working, to see if they would even consider making a spot for me, because I don't even think at that time there was something officially carved out.
So let me ask you. So let me ask you this. So,
I'm babbling. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. You're fine. So at that time when you were doing the internship here in Charlotte, was it mainly just like commercial work or indie work, or what was it?
It's hard to describe without. It's just it was a lot of media production geared toward, I don't know, the mission of the organization I was working for. So it was a lot of internal stuff, but bigger production than the most small house, than more of the small house production kind of stuff that you'd find. I don't know if I would say indie. It's hard to explain. I work for Billy Graham, so I work for the production house there. So anything that they're kicking out, we had a hand in. So a lot of natural disaster relief, we send a rapid response team out to cover just the destruction, but also the relationship building, to encourage people that lost everything. We do a TBS program every year, or every month, I'm sorry. And so that's usually 3 main stories on main subjects, and then some stand-ups and some advertising in between. So our team's constantly going. We have a lot of contractors, a lot of full-time people, and we really move a mile a minute because there's just so much going on. And one thing I'm sure you understand in the media world is that you've got to stay current. So you're constantly looking for leads. You're constantly keeping up with current events and things going on in the world, things going on in, I mean, sometimes politics, sometimes the medical world, sometimes just like the social tensions, things like that. So there's a lot of stories to tell. You could tell. So that's kind of the media that I was kind of involved in, but I was very hands off because I was still an intern. They didn't know what I could do. I didn't know what I could do. I was just there to help. I was there to learn. I was there to absorb skills. I was there to get hands on with the equipment and just kind of understand that production world, because I was thankful and grateful for my college experience. We graduated with really a variety of experience on our plate. I did multicam production. I did live production. I did documentary. I did narrative, script writing. I had experience in all those things, but like just college experience, not the real world. Sometimes there's a huge gap. And I think for me, I really didn't realize how many millions of directions you could go in the production world. So I came down to Charlotte with an open mind, open heart, to just learn, just to absorb from the people around me that have gone before me, done it before me, know way more than I may ever know in my life, and just be of help in any way that I could. So that was my internship. And toward the end of those 3 months, I was connected with a freelance contract. I really don't know the term. And a production manager, I guess, is what I want to call her. And she helped me pick up my first PA gig here in Charlotte. And she hired me on to do some PA work. And that's kind of all she wrote. I ended up working 19 hours with Billy Graham for a couple of years. And then in my other, I guess, 20-ish hours, sometimes more and sometimes through the weekends, I was able to work as a PA on sets across Charlotte. And typically it was TV commercials, and there was a few movie trailers, but it was typically a lot of TV commercials. And I don't know if I'm allowed to name brands, and this is not me bragging, but I had the opportunity to be on set for like NFL commercials, Gatorade, a lot of NASCAR stuff. I spent a lot of time at the NASCAR Speedway up in Concord.
Yeah.
Random stuff that would come through. And I was grateful for everything. And I was grateful to meet and to work with just wonderful people that understand the industry, understand the pace, understand they know how to just stay focused. They know how to work hard. They know how to help in the ways that the crew and that the set needs help. I just learned a lot from those people, and so I was grateful for that time. But I left, and I know that we wanted to touch on that as well.
Yeah, exactly. Because a lot of the guests that I've had previously, they're still in it. They're still they're still grinding out, paying their dues and just working because they love the craft. But I wanted you to touch on what motivated you to decide maybe this isn't for me after all.
Yeah, I don't do stress well. And stress doesn't do me very well either. And I don't even know if that makes sense, but that just felt like that it just kind of it was such a fast pace. It was such just a tough schedule to keep. Physically, mentally draining at points. But there were also times on set where it was so life-giving, and the people that you get to work with were incredible, and they really were what kept me going. But I was working 19 hours at this production house, and I had this one role, and then I was going and on set, and I was being a production assistant, and I was going another direction. And so I got to this crossroads where I just realized that I really just wanted to focus and nail down just one thing. I had my hand in it seemed like too many things at that point. And I had PA friends that really they were able to work alongside different departments, and they're now working with those departments. And I think at that age, knowing younger Zach, I was shy, and I didn't really take advantage of those connections and those opportunities. And that might be my fault. That might be something that I look back on one day and regret, because I know there are a lot of incredible people that work on those sets, and they know so much, and they're so talented, and they have the eye, they have the skill set, and they work so hard day in and day out. And so I have a lot of respect for the people that I had the privilege of being on set with day in and day out. I just felt like this other opportunity, this other direction was more of what I was called to. I felt more purpose there. And I think also just the stability, if I'm being honest, there was opportunity to have a more stable income, to work a more set schedule. And I think that after years of working those super long days and super fast pace, and I don't know, the stress of sometimes not knowing what every day was going to look like, those things kind of matter to me. And even with my job I have now, every day is a little different, but I just at the time couldn't handle the stress of the unknown, of knowing when the next shoot was going to happen. Because when my 19 hours were up at my production house and I didn't have another shoot to work, I didn't have work, and I didn't have the money to maybe, to invest in stuff to get started doing some contract work or freelance things. I didn't have that. I didn't have the resources. And so part of that decision definitely played into me deciding to go full time with the other production house, the other organization. So that's kind of how I ended up there. And I'm thankful. I'm thankful for the last 5 years. I've been officially an assistant video editor full time for the organization, and the things that I've learned, the things that have been sharpened, the tools I've added to my toolbox in this post-production world, I'm grateful for those things. So I'm thankful that I had an opportunity to be in that world, to understand just a little bit of how things worked, and to meet the amazing people I did. But I'm at peace with where I'm at now, and kind of the direction that this career path is heading down as well. I'm grateful for the new opportunities, and even being able to, just in the last year, I've started doing a little more contract editing for my brother-in-law up in Chicago, doing social media reels and really sharpening my editing skills, because I don't tend to do a lot of the creative editing at my current position. I do a lot more media processing, archiving, transcoding. I do a lot of multicams, syncing, quick stand-ups, quick turnaround pieces, things like that don't necessarily involve all of the parts of a creative edit. So that's the story. That's kind of how I've wound up where I'm at, and a lot of random details along the way that I'm sure I left out, but that's kind of how I ended up here, and why I chose to leave that world and pursue this other career path in the same same bubble, same umbrella, but just a different environment, different world.
Right, because I mean, because on paper, I mean, 19 hours doesn't seem like a lot, you
No.
know, and a lot of people would would definitely kill for a position like that if to get their foot in the door. So, and this might sound like a pretty stupid question, but what was it about the 19 hours that that just made you think, you know what, maybe this isn't it? Because I know you mentioned earlier that it was pretty unpredictable in spite of the fact that you had a very short work week.
Yeah, so I really during that time as a PA and also working the 19 hours, I was really trying to plant seeds of just trying to not pushing the envelope, but really inquiring hard about a potential full-time position opening up, because I felt like there was a position and there was a need for what I was bringing to the table, and I think I was chasing that stability in the midst of still trying to bring my A game every day to set, and still trying to put in 500% every day that I was on set, because I was grateful for that. I was grateful for the opportunity. You don't have to get called back, and I know that in the PA world they've always said, like, you're only as good as your last job. And so I made sure that when I was on set that I was ready to go. I knew what I was supposed to do. I had the supplies I needed to have. I was at the hotel. I was going for the pickups and then the returns and helping in any way I could, because I knew that 19 hours a week and no PA work, I'm in trouble. That's tough. And so there were just some really stressful, really hard decisions to make in the chaos of trying to juggle both worlds, because the contrast between the worlds that I was working in, it got to be a lot too, because it's just a different pace, it's a different focus, it's a different world being at my organization, and then jumping Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday onto set. And it's just I don't know how to describe it. I really don't know how to describe it, other than it was just like night and day difference on the worlds that I had to kind of juggle in both hands for a couple of years, actually.
All right.
And gosh, I'm going down the memory lane that I haven't been down in a while. I really haven't. I haven't thought about that. I feel like it was just such a chaotic season, because not only did I move down here to a new place, I didn't know anyone, I didn't know anything. I had some roommates throughout the way, and I was meeting new people on set. I was still meeting people at the organization that I was part-time at, learning my roles there, learning different skill sets that I never thought that I would learn graduating from school. One of the first things I learned how to do was digitize to tape. I never thought I'd touch a tape in my entire life. But digitizing old programs and new programs to tape to be delivered to stations that only accepted programs on tape still. So it was just like I was in all of it. And because I was in all of it, I feel like sometimes my mind was in none of it, because there was just so much going on all the time. And yeah, I haven't really thought about where my mind was in those seasons, and really the things that absolutely led to specific decisions to stay and to leave different places. I think about my freelance world. I think about being a PA a lot still. It was a tough call. It was a tough world to leave, because every shoot felt like we were going through a war, and we were coming out together closer than anyone. People don't realize this, but PAs I've always said this, they are the glue of a set. They hold everything together, whether the pay looks like that or not, or whether we're treated like that or not. We are the first to arrive. Besides location scouts, we are the first to get there, and we are the last ones to leave. And things don't function smoothly without a production assistant on set and a team of good ones. And so I feel for them. I still have the scars, from working some really tough sets with some really tough people on a really tight schedule. And not everything goes as planned. Not every shot is exactly how it was scripted and storyboarded. And that's time and money, and that's frustration, and people are hungry, and PAs just have to hold it together, And so that really toughened me up. That grew me as a person, really grew me as a man. And I'm just in awe of the people that continue to do that and work as PAs. And yeah, that's all I can really say. That's where I was. I didn't join any other departments. I didn't really build any other skills in other places. The PA world was my world, and what I grew to know and what I grew to do for most of that season of my life. And so that's where it ended, basically as it began.
Gotcha. So I did want to ask you, what was the most difficult part about being a PA? Like, were there any like particular events or particular tasks that just made you think, oh shit, I got to do that?
There were some days where all of it did. There was, I mean, once you get used to the schedule and the sleep that you're not going to get, that becomes easy. But, you know, getting home at 1 a.m. to then go to sleep and be somewhere again for day 2 at 3:30 a.m. With a production truck ready to just start lifting stuff again and setting up trash cans and chairs and getting tables ready and handing out walkies and labeling everything and things like that. Oh my gosh, like that's just a lot to do. And that's a quick turnaround, and you are running on 2 hours of sleep, and it could potentially be another long day. That still, I think, is the hardest part, because that affects everything else. That affects your ability to respond to people that are hard to deal with on set. That affects your patience, your level of patience with people. That affects your physical body to just be on your feet all day, walking around. Yeah, I would say that just the sleep schedule was for me the hardest part. I like my sleep. I'm like 30 going on 60. And I think you'll see that even more as we get into beekeeping. But like, I just need something slower. And I think really that's what it came down to too, in making that decision. I just need something a little slow. And maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm weak. Maybe I bailed too soon. That was just something that I couldn't get over. It was just so fast paced, so like nonstop all the time. And some people live for that. Some people literally live for that. And I saw that on set, and I met those people, and I loved that for them. But that wasn't for me. And so, yeah, the sleep and just how that affects your entire day, your entire ability to hold it together and do everything to the best of your ability on set, I think was the hardest part about being the PA on set.
So yeah, definitely, because I mean, just because, you know, I watch these interviews where they interview, you know, people who started off as PAs, and it's like, how do they ever find the strength to keep going? Because it just wears you down over and over again.
It really does. It really does. And there was always light at the end of the tunnel. You know, you could always see the end of a shoot, and you could feel the energy and the joy and the excitement raise again with your team. But like, there were days where you couldn't see it. Like, the team couldn't see it. There was just so much going on. There was so much to get done in the day. The weather sucked. Things were going wrong. You know, we have someone that's just been extremely hard to work with on set, and they've just kind of put a damper on the entire set and the entire day. It was tough. It was tough to want to keep moving. But at the end of the day, you knew that you had someone else doing the exact same thing you were doing, struggling with the exact same thing, and you just kind of put your head down and you did it together. And so that's why it felt like war. I mean, that's why it felt like we were getting through something really hard every time we stepped on set as a family. And I knew that 98% of what we were going to do wasn't going to get any credit, wasn't going to get any acknowledgement. So there was a lot of humility. Like, there was just a lot of, it required a level of humility that most people couldn't stomach. Like, you weren't going to get your name in the lights. You weren't going to get a chair with your name on it. You were going to stand all day. You were going to empty trash. You were going to lift and load trucks and tables, and you're going to clean up spills. You're going to do all these things that are very like low on the totem pole, but you're on set. You know, you're on set with some incredible people, and you get to see the process beginning to end. You get to help in any way you can. So I tried to see it that way. I tried to be of service and to be a servant to the people that needed help, and try to keep a good attitude, because I think at that point, those things are contagious. So it was tough to press through. There are days where I just wasn't on my A game, but there are days where I remember just having to stick it out, just having to stay positive and just encourage and to help people that were feeling the same way that I was trying not to feel. It sometimes gets the best of you, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So how did you end up meeting Julie?
So I met Julie on set, and I want to say, and I was listening to her episode. I want to say before she was doing casting, I thought I met her as another PA for a couple of shoots, and we worked together. We worked together for a while, I would say, and we weren't on every shoot together, but yeah, we definitely crossed paths a lot. And that's what blows my mind in this whole full circle of you and I talking and her, bringing my name up, and we can get into her husband and the beekeeping side too. It just blows my mind that full circle I'm brought back into the conversation. I'm grateful for that, and it's pretty cool. So yeah, I think Julie was a PA, or maybe she had her hands in some other departments, like maybe she was going that route and becoming friends and building relationships and connections with people from different parts of set and learning their worlds a little bit more.
So now I want to so how does this transition to you becoming a beekeeper?
Julie, so about a year ago, my wife and I had a huge tree fall in our backyard, and it blew over from a storm. And it was so rotted that the inside of the tree looked like coffee grounds. Like it was just mush. It was ground up. It was going to fall any minute. I could have probably blown on it and it would have fallen in our yard. Anyway, it was a huge tree. And after the storm blew through and the weather kind of calmed down, we were out in the backyard just kind of trying to assess what we were going to do next. Cause it wasn't my tree. It was my neighbor's tree, but it was halfway in our yard, just about took out our shed. And so while we were there assessing the damage, seeing what was the best plan of action, we noticed that there were bees coming in and out of a knot, like a knot in the tree.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife and I have some pretty big green thumbs. We love to garden, really like the homesteading life, trying to do things ourselves and not necessarily be off grid fully, but just learn those skills and do those things. So we have a soft spot for animals, and so we decided the best plan of action was to get a beekeeper to come out and rehome the bees. We didn't want our neighbor's tree company to come out and just butcher it, just chop it up and kill the bees and ruin the home that they had worked so hard to build. So we took some quick action, and we got online and quickly found a list of swarm catchers, people that are on our list in Charlotte and the Charlotte area, to come out and rehome bees that are in this exact situation where they are going to be killed. They're going to be sprayed. People don't care. And that's how I got connected to Julie's husband, Randall, who came out. I was connected with him on a Facebook group, I think in Mecklenburg. And he came out our way. He brought his son, and he had a suit, and they lit their smoker, and he pulled up with his truck and all that stuff. Not in that order, but that's all he did. And let me sit out there with them and rehome the swarm of bees that were in this tree. And the whole entire time, I'll never forget that day. I'll never forget that interaction, because he just was so inspiring. And Randall was so passionate about bees, and he was so happy to answer any question that I had as they were, going through the process. He had his I guess rehoming hive, his spare hive out with him. He had an electric chainsaw because he didn't want to make too much noise and too much vibration, and he started cutting the top and bottom of this piece that he was assuming that the bees had built their home up to. So he wasn't trying to cut through the hive. He was just trying to cut the top and bottom so he could move this separate piece away with all the bees. And I'm asking questions. I'm probably being really annoying at this point, because I just was I was so hyped. It was such a new world for me. I'd never really thought about bees. I'd never really seen a hive. I've seen a lot of wasp hives, but I've never seen a beehive other than like science class and on TV and the nature docs and stuff like that. I've never seen one in person. And so I was like probably shorts and a t-shirt and they're in suits, and they had their veil jackets on and their jeans and their long pants, and I'm out there just like in it, just wanting to get in, get my hands on everything, know what things are, why they're doing certain things. And the whole time Randall was just teaching me about bee behavior, teaching me about their biology and what's going on in the hive and all that stuff. And so after 2 days, they were able to get that entire swarm of bees from that log into the hive, and they ratchet strapped it up and they put it on their truck and they were on their way. But in the meantime, I was texting him back and forth and asking a bunch of questions, checking in on the bees, and just so inspired. He left, and I was just like, I just can't believe what I just saw. And he talked to me as they were out there, and he said, you could probably keep bees back here, and I definitely encourage you to do so. You have a little bit of land, you have all you would need, but you should totally become a beekeeper. And so with the garden in the backyard, the beekeeper thing just kind of felt like the natural next step. We're growing a lot of stuff. I'm planting a lot of flowers. My wife's growing a lot of vegetables, things like that. Bees just kind of made sense. And that was where it all began. And just the process. And he was walking me through the process of rehoming the bees. And still telling me about how the queen really controls everything. Her pheromone is everything. And so if you find the queen, then the swarm will follow. And so he found the queen, and after 2 days, all of those thousands of bees from that log had made their way into that temporary hive. Blew my mind. Absolutely blew my mind. And that seed was planted, and that seed just started to grow immediately. As soon as they left, I was online. I was looking at stuff, and then stumbled upon the Mecklenburg Bee School and signed up for that January to March, 2 hours every Monday. And that's it. That's how it all started.
So can you walk me through the process of what it's like to go to bee school? Because that's something I've never heard of before.
So that's, and I know we're going to get into this, and I want to talk to you about this, because I will always encourage, now that I know what I know, I will always encourage people to sign up for their local city, county, whatever, bee school. There's a very good chance that the county you live in or the city you live in has a beekeepers association. And so I went on, I was connected to the Mecklenburg Beekeepers School. And basically it's a 9-week program, and it's 2 hours every Monday. We meet in the gym of an old church, and we study everything bees. So the first 2 weeks are bee biology. We cover different equipment. We cover pest and disease, and IPM, which is integrated pest management, and different ways to help with the pest and disease that can get into a hive and totally collapse a colony. You have a gear day where you're able to get hands-on with all the gear, see what size you are in the different style veils, hold the different size boxes, 10 frame, 8 frame, see what you like, see what you don't like. We mess with hive tools. We learn how to light a smoker for the first time, things like that. So they set a day aside during that 9 weeks for you to come out and actually get to experience, all of the hands-on parts of beekeeping. And I think my favorite part about the school is that they pair you with a mentor in your area. So you don't have to beekeep alone. You don't have to learn this world on your own by yourself. You have a mentor who cares about bees, who loves bees, and wants to see you and your bees succeed. So that was a gift, and I love my mentor, and I'm grateful for her and all of the emergency trips she's taken out to my house this year. As I have a ton of questions, I want to know why the bees are doing certain things. It's really freaking me out. She's been awesome to work with, and I'm always grateful for when she comes out to the house to help me understand what's going on in the bee world.
So I imagine once you complete the course, you get a certificate or something?
Yeah, so this course is designed to, by the end of your 9 weeks, prepare you to take the official North Carolina State Bee Association's test. So it's the handwritten test, and that test covers, it's tricky because that test covers it covers a lot of what you learn in the bee school. The problem is it seems like in 9 weeks, there's not enough time to teach you everything that's going to be on the test. So they do their absolute very best to teach you and prep you for the test. But I think there's a given that every year there's going to be some surprise questions that you may have never seen or never heard. So that's tough, but that also encourages you to pick a book up again after school and continue reading and continue learning. And so maybe there's some method to the madness on that. So then after that, you have to keep bees for 4 months to then officially qualify to take the field test, which completes your certification as a beekeeper. So in my email, I mentioned that I'm close to that. I've done my written test. I've passed that. I've had bees for 4 months, but with scheduling and being out of town, I haven't been able to really sync up with my mentor yet for her to come out and give me the practical, the field test in my little apiary in the backyard.
Gotcha. So that's something you're working to complete.
I'm working toward it. Yeah. And I think because I've just started doing my winter prep and the temperatures are dropping. Bees don't like anything that's 55 degrees or colder. That really is not their vibe. They're not feeling that. So doing any kind of field test right now would just be mean. So I might have to wait till spring when the bees are up and at 'em again and lively and are foraging again to really, do the test to its entirety and see that through. So it's probably going to be not until next year that I officially get certified.
Gotcha. Well, it kind of makes sense too, because bees are pretty much seasonal animals, like bears and everything else. So my next question, it has to do with gear. Like, do you have to go to a special store or website to buy it, or is it DIY, or how does that work? How do you get started in building a hive and getting the gear and getting the smoker?
Yeah. So there are it's about 1 million directions you can go as a beekeeper, and I think that's why I like it. It's you become your own kind of beekeeper. There's 1 million styles. There's 1 million ways to do it. There's always going to be the people that tell you that there's one way, and if you don't do it that way, you're wrong. I'm a first-year beekeeper. I don't know what I don't know what I don't know. But I think one thing that I've come to the conclusion of is that you can go your own way. You can do your own thing to a certain degree, and I'll explain. So to get gear, and to get frames and to get boxes, you can go to Amazon. I know a lot of people in the bee school really encourage you to buy local, and I support that. I think that's awesome. And there's a few reasons why. A lot of things that you'll find on Amazon, sometimes they aren't made well. There's a very specific dimensions that hive boxes have to be. And sometimes when you buy off Amazon, you're buying product from another country that don't necessarily adhere to those specific industry dimensions. So sometimes you'll get frames that don't fit the boxes you bought here in North Carolina from the bee shop down the street.
Right.
And so that's just annoying. Also, a lot of times there are hive boxes that are dipped in waxes to protect them from the elements outside. And depending on what those are, may or may not be good for the bees. So I've also heard that sometimes the chemicals that are used even the waxes, the ingredients that make up some of the waxes that these boxes are dipped in that you're buying online, can be sometimes detrimental to the bees. They're pretty sensitive to a degree, and they're pretty hardy as well. And we'll get into that. But there's actually a shop that my wife and I really love to go to. And this might be a shout out to them. This might be, me putting their name out there. We really love it.
Go for it.
Because it's an experience, and we love the town of Asheboro. And I know you said you went to school in Greensboro, correct?
Yeah.
How far away is that from Asheboro? Is it
So
close at all?
I live in Charlotte, so whenever I had to drive up to Greensboro to go back to school, usually it would take, if I was going at a pretty high speed, usually I would get to Asheboro by within 45 minutes, and then it would be like another 30 to 40 minutes to get to Greensboro.
Okay, so you're not that far, but it's a really small hallmark little town.
Yeah.
We love it for the antique malls, and we love it for the little coffee shop, and there's a really good Mexican restaurant there too. But right outside of Asheboro is a bee store, and it's this really cute red barn. The guy's got 50 or 60 hives all around the property, and it's right next to a cow pasture. It's perfect. Like, if as a beekeeper, this is where I want to go. This is where I want to go every time. But it's called Bees Needs with a Z, two Z's,
Right.
of course, because you have to. And they have everything. And the guy that runs it, it's a cool story. And the staff that work it, they're so nice, and they're just so willing to help and teach you and get you set up with the right equipment based on the kind of beekeeping you want to do. I think they only sell one style of hive, and there are probably, I don't know, 10 to 15 different styles of hives that you can keep. But in bee school, as a new beekeeper, they really encourage you to start out with what's called a Langstroth hive, which is that classic, box. Doesn't have to be painted white. It can be painted a bunch of different colors, but that white box with, either your 8 frames or your 10 frames, that's typically where they encourage you to start, just so that everything they've taught so far carries over like a 1-to-1, that you don't have to like improvise. You don't have to do things a certain, learn your own way and navigate new territory on your own. It's kind of why they encourage you to do that. So that's the route I took. And I started off with one Langstroth hive, and I have 2 boxes, and then I've got a queen excluder, and we can talk about that. And then I've got my deep super, which is basically the box that they put the honey in.
Mm-hmm.
That's not traditionally the way to go. It was chaos this year, and I had boxes and I didn't have boxes, so I just threw stuff on top. Typically the setup is 2 deeps, and then you do like a medium super, which is just a thinner box on top, and that's where the bees will then collect their honey throughout the season. I ramble so much, and I'm so sorry about that, Luca.
Oh no, you're fine. You're fine. Keep going.
The world of bees is just so large, and there's so much to talk about. And I know that I'm not doing the beekeeping community. I'm not doing it justice, because there's so much that I don't know as a first year beekeeper, but there's so much I've learned. That's the typical setup. So bees needs, they've got everything you need. There's also another place up, I believe in Concord, Dandelion something. The name's not coming to me right now, but it's another smaller shop, and it's actually closer in Charlotte, so people don't want to drive that far. That they have all the supplies you need as well, and they get you fitted for your veils. They get you set up with their smoker, all of the random tools that you learn along this bee school experience in this journey that you'll need. They've got it all, and so that'd be a great place to start. A lot of big name bee school or bee stores online as well that have been around a while, and there's also another great reference online too, the American Bee Journal. They do, I think they actually sell subscriptions to magazines, but they also have an archive of some of the older stuff as well, to read about bees, to learn about bees, their behaviors, techniques, and the science and the studies and all the data collected on all things bees. It's a great resource, and I read a lot of those articles because I am constantly learning, and I love learning that world. And yeah, all that to say, beekeeping is just a giant experience, and it's a giant experiment. That's what I meant to say. We know a lot, but we don't know a lot right now in the world of beekeeping.
So you mentioned this earlier. Can you talk about what the queen excluder is? Because I always thought that the queen would be kept in the same hive as all the other bees to kind of keep them in check. But that isn't the case, right?
Right. So people think that the queen decides, she makes a lot of decisions. The queen bee actually doesn't make a lot of decisions at all. Really, her purpose is to kind of keep the chaos of the hive to a minimum, to lay eggs. A healthy queen bee can lay up to 2,000 eggs a day. So her entire job all day is to walk around cell to cell and lay an egg. And if that egg production, if her pheromone weakens, she has any kind of health defect or deformity, anything, basically her youthfulness starts to decay at all, those bees then decide to replace her with a queen that they have then started to create with one of the eggs that she laid. Isn't that crazy?
Oh, damn. They can do that?
They can do that. So
It sounds like party politics right
Yes,
there.
it's nuts. And there's some weird things that go on in a hive, and it's crazy to look out my backyard and see just a little white box, but know that there are so much random drama going on inside. So anytime that queen shows any sign of any kind of like decline in anything, the bees in that hive have started the conversation about replacing her. Like, she has no say in that. And so then they will then give they'll give a larva that she has laid, like an egg that's become a larva, a special diet to then raise that queen bee as a queen. And really, this is a fun fact that blew my mind when I first realized that every female bee in a colony is just an underdeveloped queen bee. Every female bee in a colony has the potential for the first part of its life to become a queen bee. And it's only the diet. It's only the difference in diet. I think it's a higher protein diet that then allows for that bee to fully develop into a queen. And when they do that, they don't lay just one. They don't create just one. They make a couple of queen bees. And the rule is this is, it just gets more weird and kind of funny and crazy. Whatever queen emerges first from that cell has to kill the other queens before they emerge.
Actually kind of makes sense when you think
Yeah,
about
it does make sense. It makes sense, and I don't want it to make sense because it's just so aggressive. It's so like, what in the world? But she has to kill the other queens before she can really claim her stake and become the next queen. And then, I mean, that's just one hurdle. Then she has to be accepted by the colony, and there's a chance that the colony doesn't like her. And they'll do this thing that's called balling. And it basically is a bunch of honeybees, worker bees, will gather around her, basically ball her up, and they'll fan their wings, and they'll cook her to death.
Okay, I've heard about that. I didn't know that they did that to a queen that rejected, but I have heard about
they'll get rid of
death.
They'll get rid of her. Totally get rid of her. They're like, you're done. And I mean, just them doing that, if they were to do that in a normal hive, we'd have some problems, because it's to requeen a hive, and if they don't have any other eggs and larvae that are of age and have that diet already started, it'd be tough. But that's the behavior. And so she's doing that. She's laying 2,000 eggs, hopefully, a day. There's the worker bees and all the different ages and different roles of those worker bees. They're doing different things in the hive, cleaning it up, capping those eggs over, feeding the larva and the pupa as they're emerging, taking care of those things. There's even a bee in the hive called the undertaker, and that bee's job is purely to take out the dead bodies of the other worker bees that have died in the hive. They just clean the hive out. So as that's all going on, there's peaks of the season where the bees are coming and going with nectar and pollen, and they're doing their thing, and they're coming back with food. That queen excluder that I mentioned sits between the two bottom boxes, which are typically called the brood chambers, and that just refers to where they tend to lay their eggs, where a lot of their where the babies are made and the eggs are laid, and where the food for those babies is stored. So typically, it's fascinating to open a hive, and you kind of get to read it like a book. Every frame is another page in that story that's being written in that hive. And as we're going through frames, you typically see, it's almost like a rainbow pattern. You've got your honey, you've got your pollen and everything on the outside of the frame, and on the middle toward the bottom, you've got a lot of where the queen has laid her brood and where they've been capped over. And she gets to decide. This is one thing I think she does decide, and I think the bees in the colony also help her make this decision based on the needs of the colony and the time of year. She decides if it's going to be a female worker bee or a drone bee, and those are a little bit bigger. They're fuzzier. All they do is mate. That's their only purpose. And the sex life of a bee, it's crazy to talk to you about this over the phone. Bee sex is crazy.
I think that's something we might have to save for
we might have to save. We might have to save. Just another fascinating world. There's just so much to unpack in that and their behavior for that. But anyway, so that queen excluder, it's like a metal grate, looks like what you would cover your air conditioning unit in your house, the intake vent or the wall vent. It looks like that. And it's got slivers that are on a certain size, and it basically keeps the queen from going up to that top box where the bees are gathering and making their honey and capping their honey, and it keeps it clean. So I struggled with this when I first started beekeeping. I really was like, I'm going to let the bees be bees. I'm going to stay out of their way. I'm going to let them do their thing. I don't want to interfere. And there are people that swear by that, and there are people at the other side that are like, dude, come on, you're keeping bees so you can get honey. So you might as well just throw a queen excluder on. And I wrestled with that because I didn't know. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I freaked out. I put a queen excluder on, and that just keeps the queen from going up and mucking up the honey and laying eggs in places, because no one wants to have to pull that out of the honey that they're going to be eating. Like no one wants to deal with that. So that queen excluder really is just to keep the queen from going up and making those top frames her brood nest as well.
Okay, I gotcha. Kind of keeping everything separate.
Keeping everything separate, keeping it clean, making it easier on me then to not have to worry about, killing the queen when I'm pulling the honey box for extraction, all of that stuff. So I keep those on my hive now, and I like them. I might experiment next year without them and see what happens. Every year, beekeepers are always trying new stuff. They're always experimenting, and there's a really good template on how to get started and how to continue it, but there are a lot of unknowns, and sometimes it's based on location, sometimes it's based on the weather, the amount of food they were able to forage that year. Like, there's just so many variables and so many factors that affect, I don't know, the colony and the behavior of a colony and why they do what they do. And there's things that we don't know. We're still studying. So it's been fun to dive into that world and just like skim the surface of what's out there on what's going on in those little boxes out back.
Oh my God, I'm just imagining so many future episodes where we talk about bees. Like I'm just waiting for those future episodes, man.
I love it, and there's so much to talk about, and I don't want to overwhelm you. I'm also really bad at staying on track because there's so much to talk about in the bee world. But I'm excited, and I'm happy for you, and I love that you want to become a beekeeper as well. I'm 30 years old, so it's like, don't wait for retirement. I will always do it sooner. Like just dive in, and I'll encourage you to do the bee school. I'll encourage you to, surround yourself with some mentors, and there's a lot of online resources. I love YouTube. There's some awesome pages I found on Instagram that people have been very helpful with answering questions. Bee people love to help bee people. That's what I've learned. The beekeeper community is incredible, and there are people all over the world that want to see your bees do well and help you as a beekeeper become confident, understand how to read a hive, how to read a frame, how to prepare for each season. That's been a gift, and I love that I've been in that world and been connected with some great people that are always willing to answer even dumb questions, because sometimes I just have dumb questions, I feel like, and they're more than happy to answer and help me succeed, help me to help the bees do their thing.
So I want to bring it back to the filmmaking aspect. Were there any experiences or skills that you learned while working in film that kind of translated over to being a beekeeper?
Dang, man, that's
You knew I was going to ask that question.
Yeah, I did. I heard you ask Julie what her favorite movie was, and I was ready for that one. But
that's coming at the end.
That's coming at the end. Okay,
yep.
Dang, that's a stumper, and I need to think about that. Shoot, and I really want it to be profound too. I really want it to be profound. I don't know. There was, I think there's a point in the life of a PA where you have to learn to allow the chaos to happen and be there, but be hands off. Like, you just have to let things happen. Mm-hmm. And understanding that, and understanding that at the end of the day, something beautiful is going to come out of what we're doing. It may not feel like it in the moment. You may not be able to see it right there in front of you. It's very similar to beekeeping. Like, there are, at the peak of a season, 30,000 to 60,000 bees inside of a strong hive. And there are small hive beetles. There are varroa mites. There are random things in the hive that are trying to hurt trying to basically knock out your bees. And it's a lot, and it can be chaotic. It can be stressful, and you always feel like you're never doing the right thing. You're never doing enough. You're making it worse. And sometimes letting bees just be bees, as you're aiding them, you're helping them, you're doing the best that you can, letting them just do the thing that they've been so good at doing before you even were on this planet, it could be the answer, and you get to just sit back. And sometimes, like, they're animals. They've been living in tree holes for, so many years, this freaking long time. And they don't necessarily need me, but they can use some assistance every once in a while. And to be able to sit back and let them do their thing, there's going to be some beautiful things that come out of that. They're able to requeen, like they're able to find a new leader. They're able to like organize that chaos themselves most of the time. And I get to just sit back sometimes and watch them come and go from the hive, or bounce from flower to flower on the vegetable garden, or take a walk down the street in our neighborhood with my wife. And I always joke every time I see a bee, I'm like, there's one of our bees, she's working, she's working. Probably isn't our bee, but it might be. And so it's just cool to I don't know, to have a front row seat of just a really cool natural thing that happens, and know that they're going to be okay. Like, it's going to be fine. It may be chaos. They may be doing things you've never seen before. You may not have all the answers, but they're doing their thing, and they're happy to have you along. They don't need you, but they're doing their thing, and it's a beautiful thing. And so that's a stretch. That's really a stretch. And maybe you believe it or maybe you don't, but that is my answer to that question.
No,
And
well, it makes sense too, because like you said earlier, I mean, even though you may not be needed, the fact that you're there kind of shows that you are needed to a degree.
yeah,
know?
I like that. That sounds good. Yeah, thanks for summarizing that. That's it's beautiful. It's way more beautiful when you say it.
Well, I appreciate it. I've had quite a while to think about that too. So I do want to ask you a question about climate change. How has that affected beekeeping, in your opinion?
In my opinion, I know we just the news just actually interviewed one of our advisors about, well, I guess the head of the bee school about that, and she, I don't remember how she answered this, and I don't want to give her answer because I think I have my own opinion on it. I would say it's getting hotter. I mean, honestly, I would say that summers are getting hotter and winters are. The South, I don't know how to feel about winters as a whole in the South yet, because we've just had fall for like 4 months. It's November and I've been in shorts and a t-shirt just like last week.
Right.
Things might be warming up, and I'm trying to figure out. It's fun to read the bees and to see how they respond to drastic changes in weather week to week. So I have a very small scale like example of behaviors and things like that. I definitely would say things are getting hotter. I think that's my answer, and maybe that's a dumb answer, but it's warming up. Winters are not as intense, and summers are brutal. I was just even talking to a guy at the coffee shop a week ago who's been in Charlotte way longer than me, and he was talking about just 15 years ago. Summers were not brutal. They were comfortable. They were great. And now you can't go outside without having to bring 4 pairs of pants and 4 shirts, like it's just getting hotter.
So is that helping the bees or hurting them?
I think that gives them a longer season. I honestly think it gives them a longer season for foraging, but at the same time, I think it might actually confuse them a little bit, because they have a just like an internal clock, and they read seasons, and that's actually helped me read the weather a little more as well, because I have to stay on top of prep for seasons, happening in the future. I can't prep for summer during the summer. I have to prep for summer during the spring. And so the moves I'm making and the work I'm doing and, the tests I'm doing, things like that, I've got to be thinking about those things way in advance. And I do wonder if that throws off their clock, because they it's November, and they've been able to come out and forage a little bit on the last of the goldenrod and the last of things that are still not really in bloom, but are at the end of their bloom that still have some resource to pull from. I've got to think that affects their schedule a little bit, and it might hinder their ability to fully prep for a winter. And maybe that's totally wrong. Maybe someone that knows way more than me could put an end to what I'm saying at this very moment. But from what I've been able to see small scale and just the 1 year of experience I've had in this world and being able to just go out back and watch them, I've got to think that warmer temps for longer definitely play with their ability to fully prep and to let them know when shops officially close for the winter, you know?
Yeah. So while it may seem good, it may not actually be good, right?
Yeah. I guess that's once again, you've summed up beautifully what I've taken the long way to say.
No, that's fine. But I mean that makes sense because I mean it's been like that with a lot of animals, both on land and sea. So it would make sense that while the bees are thinking, this it's pretty good that we're actually going out in November to go and get nectar to make more honey. It could affect them because then it's going to throw everything off kilter. In the long run.
Absolutely. And so that's why I either way, no matter what's going on, I'm trying to prep for winter. I'm trying to make sure that they have some emergency food stores to get them through the end of winter, because we've done an inspection just in the last couple of weeks, and we've seen more frames of capped honey that they need. Fun fact, bees that live in tropical areas where it's summer all year round, they don't typically make honey. Bees make honey in cold climates where they need to survive our winter. That's the only reason that they really collect and store and cap honey. If a bee has summer all year round, they're eating that stuff they're collecting almost immediately because they don't need to save. They don't need to overwinter anywhere. So it's fascinating as you move north, the longer the winters, the more honey that beehives need before going into winter. I'm thankful to be a beekeeper. And we found this in gardening too. We're thankful for the growing season and the beekeeping world down in Charlotte because it's easier, I think, than a lot of places the farther you go north, because they just have so much more that can wipe out a colony so quickly, temperatures and weather and things like that. So I'm grateful for that, and that's been just a fascinating thing to notice and take note of with my bees here in Charlotte and things like that.
Well, Zach, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to come onto the podcast. But before we sign off, if people want to learn more about beekeeping, or if they want to reach out to you, or they just want to know any pretty good resources for beekeeping in general, where would you direct them?
Yeah, so I've got a note because I have a few places that I like to reference when I have questions and I want to know stuff and I want to learn how to build things. My favorite YouTube reference, my favorite YouTube beekeeper, his name is David Burns, and that's what his channel's name is, David Burns. He's up in Illinois, I believe. So a lot of his beekeeping has to do with more of their climate, but the practical skills, the advice, the reviews he does on certain pieces of equipment and gear and frames and things like that, he's spot on. And I've really appreciated sitting down and watching through his videos. They've been very educational, very informative. Another big guy in that world, and he goes to a lot of bee conventions around the U.S. His name is Kamen Reynolds. He's out of Tennessee, and I think his climate's a little more similar to Charlotte's. Not as hot, not as humid, but I think they deal with similar waves of weather. He's got a lot of great methods, a lot of great techniques, has a lot to teach, very passionate. Both these guys are very passionate. And on Instagram, I've got a couple of accounts that I follow that have been great references as well. They share very fascinating articles that get you thinking, that challenge you as a beekeeper to make you a better beekeeper. And they also just post a lot of really cool stuff. Their passion for bees, behavior, history of bees and famous beekeepers, things like that. One of them is Cassia and Bees, I'm sorry. Another account that I really appreciate is Carmen over at Nuga Honeypot. She's in Chattanooga, Tennessee. She was just answering questions I had for her today about insulating my hives for the winter. And then I wanted to make sure that I gave you the website for the Mecklenburg Beekeepers Association, because beekeepers school signups is officially open. and I think they only go for a couple of more weeks, but I really encourage you to visit the mecbeekeepers.org website and inquire, do some research, maybe even sign up to go through this next 2024 beekeeper school just to learn. I mean, not even if you don't want to beekeep, that's fine. Totally understand. But it's so educational. You get a lot out of it, and it might spark a new passion. At least then you have a knowledge of what those bees are doing in your yard and how vital they are to everything else that's growing and fruiting and making a vegetable and all of those things being pollinated. You gain an appreciation, and then you also understand like the world of a beekeeper and the challenges and the responsibilities and the honor it is to beekeep and to keep bees and to help them and aid them in the ways that they need. And I'll do a little plug if you want to. You don't have to. I just run a little Instagram account. It's @_Z's, the letter Z's, Bees, apiary _. That's my Instagram. You can check me out. I need to do better at posting more stuff. I realize the algorithm and all of that stuff, I'm probably not helping myself, but I'm grateful for the follow, grateful for people coming along on this journey with me, grateful to talk about bees. Luca, thanks for letting me sit down and just talk your ear off. I'm sorry if we didn't get anywhere, but
Oh no, you're fine. I mean,
love
you're just
bees,
giving-
man. I
mean,
love bees.
you're just giving me more ideas for future episodes, and I plan on having you come back later on.
Man, I'd be honored. There's so much to talk about. I feel like I didn't skim even the surface of beekeeping and all that goes on, but still learning, and I'm still grateful for the ability to continue this journey and to become a better beekeeper, and ways that carries over and to who I am as a person and who I want to be. So grateful. And those are my resources. Go check them all out. I support them. I love them. They're fun to watch, and they've got a lot of great advice and a lot of great helpful tips.
Yeah, and if you can send me the links for some of those, I'll put them down in the description below. So
You got
people
it.
can reach out. So before we sign off, I asked this of all my guests. Is there a particular movie or TV show that you really, really love that you want to give a shout out to? Doesn't have to be bee related.
No, it's okay. No. But it's not going to be a surprise to you. And I love that you had just gotten done talking about how you had just watched Man vs. Wild, because we have just started working our way through Homestead Rescue. It's a show on HBO Max. It's been out for apparently a while. I'm always late to the game on every old show that's been out. I'm always watching old shows like they just came out. It's with a guy named Marty Rainey and his daughter and son from the middle of nowhere, Alaska, living off the grid, and they go through all over the US and Canada, and they help people that thought they could homestead and realized when it became a matter of life and death that they actually are in trouble and they need help. And so they go through, and it's just fascinating. It's just a fascinating show, and I love the short documentary style storytelling. And I mean, even the camera crew puts themselves at risk just like getting the shots that they get. And Marty Rainey is crazy. He'll do anything to help people live off grid. And it's just, I love the intuitive and the ingenuity. I love the out of the box ideas he has to make something life-saving out of just the resources that they have on their property. It blows my mind. So I love that for the creativity. We just watched a beekeeper episode. I have some opinions about it because I don't know if he's keeping bees correctly, but it was very fascinating, and he loved bees, and they made his homestead functional and livable, and he got to keep the bees. So I was happy about that.
Excellent. Well, Zach, again, I can't thank you enough for taking the time out of your day to be on this podcast. Thank you so much. And I just want to thank everybody for taking the time to watch this episode. And remember, as always, like, comment, subscribe, and we'll catch you on the flip side. Take it easy.
Luca, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.